As someone who hates horror games and will refuse to play one even if my life depended on it, I just had to play this one. This isn't one of the scariest games in particular, it actually barely fits the description of your typical horror game. Overall, it's so unforgiving and cruel that even with infinite knowledge, still doesn't guarantee your survival. Overall, we're a mere coin flip can dictate whether or not you will get to see another day and lose 8 hours of your progress because you were feeling confident. But first, let's take it all the way back to the beginning. Fear and Hunger is a very unique and special game whose creator must have been so high that he became the first person to visit Mars. Developed by a single Finnish guy named Miro Häverinen, who stumbled upon the idea of creating Fear and Hunger by playing his own messed up version of D&D and eventually creating this game as a school project. Now may I just quickly ask, why are the most fucked up games always made by Scandinavian developers? Cry of Fear was developed by a Swedish team, Cruelty Squad by a Finn, and finally Free Legends by Gamilian Studios. I mean, no wonder, living in the safest, happiest country in Europe clearly breeds these ideas.
I'm sorry, I don't like the way you are looking at me.
Fear and Hunger was created in RPG Maker, as its name suggests, a program used for creating mostly simple role-playing games. RPG Maker gives people with zero to no experience a chance to try their hand at producing their own games. And as Miro didn't have much experience in game development before Fear and Hunger, only a couple little demos of games that he never released, RPG Maker was the perfect choice. His lack of experience is very noticeable during the playthrough, as there's countless of bugs and glitches that you will encounter where quite a few are run-ending. By his own words, Fear and Hunger was inspired by titles like Silent Hill, Hellraiser, Amnesia, Berserk, and finally Souls-like games, which is kinda obvious. Oh my god, this is quite literally the Dark Souls of indie games. Just kidding, don't leave, wait, I can redeem myself. And next thing, while Miro never outright told us when he started working on this game, from his interviews we know that while talking about the most challenging part of development, he mentioned that it took a lot of his time in the past 2 years. So I'm guessing the start was somewhere in the late 2015 to early 2016, as the game was released on 11th of December 2018. Now what is this game exactly? Good question. If I didn't know Miro was Finnish, I'd say this was a JRPG. What's the difference between a classic RPG that you may be used to and a JRPG, you ask? I think people believe it's only on the continent it was developed on. Well, I disagree. Classic RPGs include games like The Witcher.
What can I do for you? I'm a witcher.
While JRPGs include games like Labyrinth of Galeria, The Moon Society, Bravely Default 2, or the most famous one, Final Fantasy. The obvious difference is I'll show you side by side. The other more subtle ones tend to be that, more often than not, JRPGs will not hold your hand and they're filled with lore so deep that you'd be able to fill up the Mariana Trench with it, while also being easily missed. And I'm not saying every classic RPG holds your hand, or that they don't have much lore, but these games are developed with people like us in mind, who will quit the game 5 seconds after it doesn't give us a hint on solving a puzzle or doesn't explain every little story element. Fear and Hunger, on the other hand, is the complete opposite of that. It's not a classic RPG, actually, it's nothing like anything I've ever played. I've never seen a game that hates its player as much as this. The game has no tutorials, no tips or hints to help you. It's entirely based on trial and error. Many people have given up on it right away or had to look up guides on how to play it, complaining on Reddit forums about how hard it is, when they've only played it for about 2 hours. There's a lot of encounters, choices, characters, lore, mechanics that you are just overwhelmed with from the get-go. Does this statue hold any importance? Who's this? What's this item? Are questions I was asking myself this entire time playing. And whether you find the answers or not, it's entirely up to you. In total, there's 42 weapons, 54 pieces of equipment, 51 books, 20 scrolls, 23 different potions, 30 food items, and 27 miscellaneous items, which include stuff like throwables, items for crafting, keys, or I don't know, opium. That's 247 items that you can find. Now let's pair it with all the characters, encounters, enemies, choices, and much more thrown at you the second you enter the game. Now, we're finally getting to the actual game. Subscribe. After starting up, we get to choose between 4 characters: Mercenary, Knight, Dark Priest, and finally the Outlander, all equipped with different sets of skills and playstyles. Each of these is born with a different soul, which represents their skills when starting out. The main characters in Fear and Hunger 1 possess the Endless, Dominating, Enlightened, and finally the Tormented Soul. Their meaning will be explained much later, so don't burden yourself with it right now. I chose Mercenary since he was the first in line. I've played a lot of RPGs and MMOs, and my general idea of the 4 playable characters was this. Mercenary was the scout. Very fast, not much HP, but deals bleeding status effects or poisons. Knight was in my eyes this tanky fighter who has a lot of HP. Dark Priest I knew right away was going to be the mage, cause come on, look at him. And then Outlander was going to be a mix of everyone. I probably would have been correct if this was any other RPG. Unfortunately, this is Fear and Hunger. It's unlike anything that you can expect. After choosing, you're given a little background story that you get to craft for yourself. Depending on your answers, you're either given various items or different skills. Arriving at the gates of Fear and Hunger, my immediate instinct was to explore and look around. This is the first instance where the game truly shows its fangs, when it won't allow you not even 10 seconds of peace the moment you start playing by sending dogs after you for roaming the yard in front of the dungeon for too long. Subsequently, having to fight these dogs is usually proven to be quite deadly, and it has a 70% chance of shattering your eardrums IRL after you forgot to lower the game audio. The game is very fucking loud. I had no idea what to even do, what areas to target, and with lack of gear it was the first stepping stone for me to grow. At that moment I realized what kind of ride I'm in for. While playing Fear and Hunger, you can't let deaths influence you to give up or stop playing. It's always an experience which will expand your knowledge and cause you to grow. And while the number of deaths and hours of my life being lost because I didn't save beforehand are exponentially higher than I like them to be, I still enjoyed the hell out of Fear and Hunger. Speaking of Fear and Hunger, it's probably the most important mechanic in this game, alongside many others that you will have to learn how to utilize. Every member has their own hunger and mind meter that quickly drains as you traverse the dungeons. Not paying attention to this will give your characters debuffs which influence your damage, your health, and will eventually cause death to such neglected individuals. Hunger in particular lowers your health. There are 5 stages to this status effect, each lowering your health more and more, where you eventually crumble, not even being able to walk until the sounds of your empty stomach put you to sleep for eternity. Mind meter is draining alongside your hunger. To raise your sanity back up, you will need to use traditional means such as drinking alcohol, smoking tobacco, or even using opium. Mind is the second most important bar you need to keep your eye on. Running out of sanity will result in various consequences, such as party members trying to and eventually leaving your party, heart attacks, or developing different phobias which negatively impact your combat ability. There are a lot more different mechanics which I'll explain as we progress throughout the game, so for a start, this'll do. After starting again, I decided to head straight into the dungeon, not through the main gate, but instead going through a doorway on the left. I was led onto a stairway with a text saying, "You step inside the darkness. You feel your sanity decline with every passing moment." This plays into the mind mechanic that you have to maintain. When you're in the darkness, your mind drains a lot quicker than in clear light. Lighting torches helps your mind meter from draining as quickly. On higher difficulties, darkness is even more dangerous, making it impossible to see without a torch, whereas on my difficulty, there's a small circle of light around you this entire time where it allows you to navigate without needing one. Making my way down this part of the dungeon, I stumbled upon this symbol, which was drawn with blood and a decapitated corpse right next to it. It looks like a huge horizontally flipped R inside a circle with 3 more circles inside, one with a symbol similar to a pentagram. This was obviously a sacrifice for or to something. Remember these symbols. Exploring further, I came across my first enemy, a huge round head with eyes and something resembling a mouth with teeth walking on tentacles. This monster is called a Maneba. It's one of the easier enemies in the game as you can defeat it without much strategy. Making my way around it, I found armor stands. Now here we are introduced to the coin flip mechanic, which will haunt you for the entirety of the game. It's simple, you get to choose either heads or tails, and if you guess correctly you are rewarded with an item. This isn't with every crate or barrel, that would be just straight up annoying. It only happens with bookshelves, chests and armor stands. A coin flip is to be fair. It does not play favorites and will ruin your runs if you rely on paths or choices which involve its use too much. This mechanic plays a huge part in Fear and Hunger. You see, it isn't only triggered during loot runs or opening chests. This mechanic pops up in combat and even with something as simple as saving. You can double your chances of successfully hitting a coin flip by using lucky coins you find on the ground throughout the map. By holding shift as you're about to choose a side, it'll throw 2 coins simultaneously. It still doesn't guarantee you a correct answer though. As I was exploring further parts of the basement, I was suddenly dragged underground where I got jump scared by a floating megamind. Oh my god, that scared the shit out of me. Jesus Christ. This section is called the flip side, and you can be dragged here only once in your playthrough. It's easily escapable, all you have to do is walk all the way to the end. Its only inhabitant is the Dark Witch that scared me a moment ago. Now if you take your time and hang around too long, like I had, it will engage and a battle will start. Yeah, I have no clue who you are. I don't want to fight her, I feel like she might be strong. The Dark Witch fights using blood arts, which means that if you're at the beginning with no items, no party members and no experience on how to fight such things, you're severely fucked. Starting again, I decided on going through the main gate instead. Making my way down the corridor, I interacted with a table where I found writings of some person who's dwelled in the dungeons for too long, telling us to turn back.
This nightmare has taken its toll on me. I am devolving into something far lesser than the man I once was. All the high morals and ethics have no value here. The things I've done to survive. There is no place for a little miscreant like me in the warmth of the sun anymore. I am a part of these dungeons now. Part of this never-ending nightmare. Just one more cog in this machine of fear and hunger. In a way, I find it comforting. I have a definite place in this wicked world. And I'm writing this here as a warning for anyone who happens to step down this darkness. Do leave, if it is still possible.
We also found our first book, Book of Fears. In short, the Book of Fears explains phobias characters have or can develop. It's just actual phobias that do exist IRL. Only thing that they influence is faster mind drain if you face enemies related to the phobias. I was only worried about arachnophobia, but thankfully this game has no proper spiders. Venturing further, the terrible smell of corpses rotting on the tables of this place hit my imaginary nose. Signs of cannibalism on every step, with guts being served on plates and blood everywhere. Leaving the kitchen, I got spotted by a bulky pale figure and eventually caught. Oh! Oh! No! Oh shh! These enemies are former guards of these dungeons wearing only a skirt, I think, possessing a third leg described as a stinger and wielding a huge meat cleaver in his right hand. Talking to him was proven to be useless, as his mind was long gone, only thinking about one thing, that sweet ass of yours. After my futile attempt of talking to him, he attacked me, severing my arm. I retaliated with an attack pointed at the hand that's holding the cleaver. This is how fighting works in Fear and Hunger. Your character can easily lose limbs or get his bones broken if you're not careful enough. The same way they can damage your body parts, you can do the same to them. If I wasn't dumb enough to try talking to him and attacked his arm right away, he wouldn't have been able to take my arm. Every enemy has an attack pattern that never changes. You will have to decide on which attack will be the most devastating and focus yours on that part of the body. And same as Souls games, you will not know that information without charging in blindly first, as I'm experiencing at this given moment. Also, losing or breaking your limbs will stick with you forever. It's permanent. Such injuries will influence your journey till the end. These injuries result in not being able to wield shields or use two-handed weapons anymore. On his third turn, I was required to do a coin flip, which I ended up guessing correctly. After defeating my first guard, I looted the cleaver off of him and his skirt, loincloth. Delving deeper, I was ambushed by another guard. Again! Where even though I did target the arm right away, I ended up guessing the coin flip incorrectly, leading to my death. Ah shit. Yeah, I'm dead. Fighting them wasn't worth it yet. I ended up skipping them entirely, going all the way into a little library at the top of the dungeon, where I found a mock-up book on a shelf. Not knowing its purpose, I explored some more until I ended up in some quarters where I found captain's orders and a girl locked in a cage. The fuck is this? Didi's mansion? I tried asking her questions, but I'm given no response. As the cage was locked and I had no key or other means to open it, I left her behind for the time being. I decided to read the captain's orders. On the subject discussed earlier in our last exchange, we no longer have need for those captives. What you do with those poor bastards is none of my concern. If you do go with your wicked plans, please make sure you leave no one talking about the studies performed. No witnesses, so to speak. Cruelty is not unheard in times of war. I'm sure you, if anyone, should know this. But some things exceed the limits any human should ever experience. We do not want word going around. Take no insult in my words, but for my own sake too. I hope I never hear from you again. Signed by Captain Rudimer. It's a letter addressing the use of unneeded captives for experimentation. It is not an order for all of the men in this dungeon, it's talking to an individual, clearly showing disgust in the experiments this person performs. Going further left, I noticed a little room with a weird red circle, another one of these sacrificial drawings, same as the one in the basement. Seeing a book open up next to it, I checked it out. It's a sacrificial circle that helps you appease and gain favors from gods of this place. There's Groroth, the destroyer of men, who requires human sacrifice, Sylvian, the god of fertility and love, who requires an act of love. Once I made my way outside, I reached another part of this place called the Inner Dungeon, where I spoke to a priest I met. After engaging in a fight, I chose to talk to him instead. I was presented with 3 question options. What is your origin, which god do you serve, and what are these dungeons? Asking about which god he serves, he told me they worship all of the gods, Groroth, Sylvian, and Olmir, the Ascended One. At the sacrificial circle, interacting with it, you are given 3 options: sacrifice, make love, and finally pray. If you chose to pray, you get to pick between Groroth, Sylvian, and finally Olmir. I wasn't sure who Olmir was, as the book next to the altar forgot to mention him. Speaking to the priests, he confirmed that there are indeed 3 gods of this place. Now you get to ask questions about the individual gods or about new gods. I chose the new gods option. He explained that around 800 years ago, mankind took matters into their own hands because of the neglect they faced from the other gods. They believe new gods will make a change. On the question of what is your origin, he told us that he's just a wretched being on a holy pilgrimage and that all the priests dream of delving down these dungeons. Then finally, I asked him about the dungeons. By his own words, the dungeons of fear and hunger are a nexus for different planes of existence, and that it's one of the last places where a man can still meet his maker. After that question, the priest started summoning something, so I quickly fled. As I was wandering around, I ran into this monstrosity. Approaching it, I found out its name was Human Hydra. Talking to it or killing it did nothing. I tried looking up its purpose after finishing the game. I thought I was missing something, but no, this being is entirely useless. I noticed several other priests looking at a person nailed to a weird statue of some sorts and ended up sacrificing him by mistake.
Ah, shit.
Also, I ran into some random dirty toilet as well, and my immediate thought was, what happens if you jump in? The answer is, you can't climb out and your run is over, so I just decided to saw off my limbs. I swear to God, my curiosity killed me way too many times during my playthrough. Upon my return, I left the toilet untouched. Instead, I made my way into a library where I met a familiar face, the Dark Priest. He was pretty frustrated with me disturbing his peace. I asked him who he was and found out his name is Enki. Didn't want to risk a fight with him, I stopped at once. And by the way, I found the place where I needed to place the mock-up book. I ended up finding another captain's room where I collect his diary number 1 and a small key. Captain Rudimer, 16th of January 1590. Shorter once again went too far with his wicked methods. The prisoner was but a child, but already had to go through so much torture that he shit himself more than he bled. I must say, I'm afraid of Shorter to a certain degree. Sometimes I think I would do this world justice if I just offed him with my blade. Very few know, but Shorter used to be a famed holy knight of Rondon back in the day. He was able to achieve great fame at a very young age. But during our holy campaign against the Eastern Territories, he was captured. Everyone presumed him as dead. He died as a war hero. He should have died as a war hero. But 5 years later, when we occupied the eastern capital Jetaya, we also found what was left of Shorter. He was but a shadow of his former self. A disfigured, hunchback man with barely any resemblance to the great hero so many adored. I am sure during those 5 years, he went through every method of torture he now puts to use himself. Just to honor the memory of Shorter the White, I let this monster live today, although I see great contradiction in my words here. No man, I'm probably gonna meet that person as well. Oh man, I finally went through the secret passage behind the bookshelf and ended up in the backyard of this place. Walking through the backyard, I got interrupted by an arrow shot at me.
Wait, we meet each other?
A man walked out from behind a tree. It's Outlander. He's comforted by the fact that he's not the only sane mind here and gives us a question. Are you evil? Yes or no? He says, if he were us, he'd leave this dungeon and warns us not to cross paths again. I ended up talking to him about his past, Asking him how he's so familiar with evil, he explains that his people, the northern people of Odegaard, found the dark continent of some Vinland, where you can feel the presence of a greater evil, the same one that resides in these dungeons. Who are you? His name is Ragnvolder, and he's from the aforementioned kingdom of Odegaard. He's here on a mission to find a relic that a certain person stole from his people, and that man is imprisoned somewhere deep down below this dungeon. I asked him if he'd wanna join our party, but for now, he refused. I found a statue in the middle of the backyard. Its chest was bleeding and it looked like it was nailed the same way the person in the dungeon was. Yes, the one I sacrificed by mistake. By interacting with it, you get to pray to one of the three gods. I ended up praying to Groroth. Its purpose for the time being was unknown. I continued exploring the backyard. As I went further, I ran into something I wrote down as sex forest / bunny coat. Seeing as I have to probably censor all of this, there's a huge orgy of some sort going on. There's a lone guy standing in the middle. After talking to him, he asks if you're looking for a partner, and I answered yes. I wish I hadn't though. We ended up having how do I not get demonetized? We ended up having carnal knowledge. It grew my affinity with Sylvian and I felt rejuvenated. Now what this means is that every time your health and sanity is low, you can just come here and get it entirely reset. The problem is that only the first time is free, and as I was experimenting, I did it again. I had to do a coin flip now, which of course I missed and finished up in an infinite loop of getting my ass stretched. This time I went to the right, where I killed a guard that was roaming the halls. Following a trail of blood, I made my way to a torture room. I had a little realization of to who this part of the dungeon might actually belong to. Walking, I was suddenly stopped. A man in purple clothes approaching me. His name was Buckman. Someone screaming behind him, he ran into a room. By following him, I finally found my first safe spot. I was going to save the game before proceeding, finally not having to worry about starting all the way back at the gate. Throwing a coin flip, I guessed incorrectly. As I was sleeping, someone walked into the room. It was Trorter. He finally caught up to Buckman, but instead of him, he took me! Buckman sold me out! And by the way, get used to this stupidity. You get to see me miss this exact coin flip at least 7 more times. This entire segment has me flabbergasted, bro, to be honest. I can't even speak right. As I was searching through crates, I found a quill. Remembering I had an empty scroll, I decided to try and use it together, guessing that's what it was for. I wrote some random stuff in there, thinking it was like a journal we get to keep. Tracking back through the dungeon, I paid Trorter a visit. It was time to enact my revenge on this monster. Cutting off both his arms, I talked to him and ended up snitching on Buckman that was hiding in the save room. He rewarded me with the second floor key and a couple healing vials. That's how much human life is worth in this dungeon. Backtracking into the room to save my game, I was still given a coin flip. I thought we were friends, that I was safe. He called me again the damn hunchback of Notre Dame looking fuck. The problem is, he had no arms, so the game got stuck for an eternity of him just staring at me. What's happening? Did the game get stuck? Oh my god, it did get stuck. Cause the guy has no arms, so he cannot chop me up. I've bugged the game. Yeah, he has no arms, so he can't kill me. I gotta reset. First of all, how the hell did you carry me to this table with no arms? And second of all, I still had to reset with no saves to my name. Starting again, my goal was to hunt down Trorter right away and get rid of him. I had enough. On my way back, I encountered a normal guard that I somehow managed to die to and witnessed something I wish for no one else to witness. For a minute, I didn't realize I was still alive and I could continue playing. He cut off both my legs, stretched my ass out so bad I was bleeding the entire time, and the game still makes you continue playing. I survived for an entire 10 minutes, crawling through the dungeons until I eventually collapsed and bled out. Amazing run in my opinion. My moment had finally come. Instead of hiding, I chose to ambush. I wanted to take him out limb by limb until he was left with nothing but his head and torso. Even when he was defenseless with no limbs, talking to him, he still thought he was in the superior position, telling me to surrender. I took him out right after that. Looting him gives you the same key as helping him out, so I never really felt like that was a viable option on my runs. As I was walking away from Trorter's body, feeling victorious, I get a goddamn coin flip. Of course, I ended up missing it and I fell through the floor, ending up in prison. Tried to save with no luck once again, missing another coin flip and being caught lacking by a guard. Fuck this game. I'm so fucking sick of this mechanic. Legit. I played the guard like a low budget fiddle, getting him caught in a bear trap. It was an easy win.
Fuck you, bitch.
Searching the cells, I found a doll. Guessing it was probably for the girl entrapped in the captain's room, I took it with me. I felt like I made a good amount of progress. It was time for a save or not.
Fuck off.
I am yet to hit a coin flip when trying to save. Fighting a prisoner this time, I tried talking to it, getting no answers. I got infected, started bleeding, and overall, I legit stopped trying to talk to these dumb mindless people in these dungeons. Hoping to get rid of my frustration, I tried fighting a door, to no avail. On the other side of the prison, there was a staircase. Walking through it, I ended up in this very creepy place with the floor being covered in what I think is Hellman's ketchup, and countless bodies looking as if a plow ran through here. At the end of these, what I think are sewers, was a huge pit. I had an idea. I'll try to jump in and see what happens, but before that you already know I tried to save. And drum rolls please. I was successful. It was time to jump. Falling all the way down, I ended up breaking both my legs, having to crawl for the remainder of this run. What else could I have expected? As I was exploring the cave without my legs, I found another one of these statues, but now it looks different. Once again being presented with an option of praying to one of the 3 gods of this place. These statues all represent one of the gods, and you are supposed to pray to the correct one. If you pray to the right god, you are given affinity to the said god. But the question still remains, what is affinity for? Later on, I got stuck, caught by the cave gnomes and killed. I swear to god, there are a lot of game ending bugs in this game that never were and never will be fixed, and that was one of the major issues I have with Funger. After loading up my save, I was curious about this unexplored corridor. You can hear breathing from the darkness ahead. Behind bars, a man standing. With no clothes and with his arm being replaced with a hunk of metal, I thought he was one of Chorter's experiments. Also, I don't know about you, but he really reminds me of Pyramid Head from the Silent Hill series. And guessing by the fact that the creator is a fan of the series, he was probably inspired by his design as well. Exploring the prison, there was one room I missed, and it was another one of the captain's quarters, where I found the captain's diary number 2, Captain Rudimer, 30th of April, 1590. It was a mistake to take this position in these dungeons. It's next to impossible to keep any kind of order among troops here. There are powers at play here that we as mere mortals cannot fight against. I've come to accept the madness. A naked prisoner crucified on a sacrificial statue with his guts hanging out. Just another day in the dungeons. More and more troops committing suicide every day. More food for those left. Orders to let some cultists do their wicked rituals here. Anything goes. All the gore and macabre scenery has become trivial to me. The high priest demanded that we give them our prized prisoner, the captain of the mercenary army, Legarde of the Midnight Sun. I hesitated at first. After all, his worth in propaganda alone cannot be underestimated, but those priests somehow convinced higher-ups of their ways. Legarde was transferred to the lower levels below the mines. I have no idea what is the purpose behind this. Nothing good can come out of it, but orders are orders. I feel bad for the poor man. It's obvious the Kingdom of Rondon backstabbed him just because he was gaining influence at such a rapid rate. And now his story ends here, defiled in some unholy practices. And not just that, but I also found 2 books talking about the gods. The Studies of Sylvian and Studies of Gorov, both being part 1. The book, Studies of Sylvian 1, explains that Sylvian is the goddess of love, lust and creation. Supposedly, she created humans and wanted to have more control over their lives. Once she realized those very humans were no longer interested in being guided by her, she became twisted, shaping mankind more to her liking through the use of flower magic. At some point in history, mankind fell into a craze where a synchronized mass of naked people was stuck in an endless loop of having intercourse, as we've seen in the garden as well with the bunny mask code. Now the book Studies of Grove 1. It starts out with a quote saying, "To give room for new generations, for new trees to grow and usher, the prior forest needs to be burnt down." Gorov's sole purpose is creation and destruction. He's the destroyer of men. The followers of Grove sees destruction as pure kind. It doesn't target anyone specifically, it just exists. He wears bodies and skin of men and women. They say he might still be walking among us and blessing us with his blood magic. Brief explanation of the magic part. Flower magic is something Sylvian allowed us to have. They are usually healing spells, and then blood magic is either abilities that you have to sacrifice your own body to cast, or really high damage abilities that cost a lot of mind. That's how magic in these dungeons is possible. The old gods blessed us with it. Yeah, and I tried fighting Enki and got one shot by said blood magic. It's pretty strong. By the way, as I was going back to the blood pit, I got attacked by some sort of lizard enemy. Last time there was no one here, so I wonder if something specific triggered it. I was lost for almost an hour. I had no clue where to go. I was walking around interacting with everything. I somehow unlocked the cage the girl was being held in. I must have taken the lockpick skill when I started a new playthrough. She became my first companion. I ended up giving her a trench coat for more protection and equipping her with a skeletal arm for more damage. The problem was I was barely scraping by myself, but now I had two people to take care of, both in terms of hunger and mind. And I still had no clue who or what this girl was for, yet I swore to protect her no matter the cost, many times even dying on purpose if I ended up losing her. We ran into a guard stranded in front of the prison. And no, not the regular guard enemies, a sane human heavy guard by the name of Sir Seymour, a knight from the Kingdom of Rondon. Asking him what happened, he tells us he delved here with multiple comrades, but each and every one of them got lost. His priority is to regroup with a prince called Ludwig Buckman. I was curious if he knew how this dungeon ended up in the state that it is now. He explained that this place was used as a prison by the Kingdom of Rondon. Supposedly there are rumors speaking of unimaginable horrors, and after what we've experienced, I wouldn't call them rumors. Asking him about tips for survival, he just tells us to be defensive. Beheading should be our #1 priority in a fight, but explains that it's pretty tough and risky to do so. You should start by shaking the balance of the enemy through attacking their legs and then finally attacking the head. Patience is key. Yeah, I mean, those hints are useful if you're new, but from my experience when starting a fight, the last thing you want to do is drag it out. The longer it takes, the more damage, limb loss or even stronger abilities come into play. Finish the fights quickly if you're in one, rather than being patient. Clearing the prison of guards, I stumbled upon a lever of some sorts next to the captain's room. Something in the dungeon got activated. I wondered, could it have something to do with the huge pit? It was a lift of some sorts, finally getting to descend to the depths properly without breaking both my legs. I should mention, these eggs right here that I've been popping this entire time, they spawn a boss. Like, what even is this creature? With no way out, I tried to fight and lost the girl in the process. The cave mother flew away and I was left alone. Oh, never mind, she's back. Fighting her in her weakened state, she finally falls and I get a no-mag from her. I lost the girl, defeated the boss, and all I'm given is an omelette ingredient. I didn't want to continue without my companion, but I did, to know how to navigate this part later once I bring her back. Going deeper, I ran into a strange creature with a face reminiscent of a carved pumpkin and clothes that really reminded me of Buckman. Its name is Pocket Cat. Who the fuck are you? Oh, it's the cat from the story. Why have I recognized him? Well, I did find a book explaining the story of Pocket Cat right on my first run, so I'm going to explain it right now as it was irrelevant. The tale of Pocket Cat chapter 1 talks about how a boy didn't listen to his parents and decided to run outside into the forest during rain when it's supposedly more dangerous. As he ran deep into the forest, he met the Pocket Cat. He was watching it through the bushes, but the cat eventually noticed him. He ran back home as quickly as he could, where his mother was waiting for him, saying, "So you just had to go to the woods? And how do I know this?" She went back inside and showed him a little parcel with decorated wrappings. The boy unwrapped the decorated paper with small mouse prints on it, and inside the parcel was catnip. Now the tale of Pocket Cat chapter 2. The boy's mom and dad were arranging a large party for all the big families in the town. The boy got into an argument with his mom about having to wear a fancy suit since he didn't feel comfortable in it. The party guests started coming. There was the mayor with his wife, the Parkinson's, no, not the disease. And then there was one person that the boy especially noticed. A gay gentleman with a constant grin on his face. How he found out he was gay is up to interpretation, probably because of the purple suit, I'm guessing. As the full moon had risen the highest and all the people were at their drunkest, the boy noticed the gay gentleman was gone. After searching, he found him howling in their backyard. The man noticed the boy staring at him. His eyes were the same as the two haunting yellow eyes the boy had seen in the forest some days ago. He noticed the man was the same height as their house. With a cat-like expression, the man said, "Fancy meeting you here, young mister." The Pocket Cat asks him how they'll handle the situation now that he's seen something he shouldn't have. You as the one reading are giving 3 options. "I won't say a thing. You can trust me. Please don't hurt me." Or, "I will reveal you for what you truly are." The options only give you different dialogue. The Pocket Cat eventually says, "Well, let us not dwell on those matters. The night is festive. It is full moon after all." While he stares at the moon, he murmurs to himself.
Ah, the old one. My lullabies go to deaf ears. The humankind pursues the same ghost persistently.
The cat asks you one last question.
If I were to get the moon itself to you, would you give up on your quest and lay with me here for tonight?
You can either answer yes or no. If you say yes, get happy, no, get sad. And that's all there is to it. For now. We'll encounter the pocket cat later on as well, but so far this is all there is to him. These books or the options you pick don't really influence the latter encounters or the story in any way. Now to the actual in-game Pocket Cat. Pocket Cat is basically a merchant, like that Resident Evil 4 guy.
Over here, stranger.
He can trade you for items, which are very useful and powerful. Either the Claymore, a huge double-handed sword, Necronomicon, a book that can teach you blood magic spells, Book of Enlightenment, which is basically an on-the-spot save file, or the Book of Forgotten Memories, which can teach you a spell related to your character. Now that's some really good stuff. What's the currency you pay with? Bitcoin, dollars or euros? Kids. He wants kids. So for any of these items you'd have to give him the girl, which I was definitely not willing to do on any of my playthroughs, so I never used his services. I left him alone as I don't need my brand associated with this kind of behavior. I discovered and ran into some huge tunnel entrance. Roaming the tunnels, I got into a room filled with bloody corpses and some sort of a lake. Noticing something shiny in the water, I tried picking it up. Once again, starting a boss fight, I feel like I had no chance of winning. I got stomped to death in mere 2 turns, but this death didn't bother me. I made a lot of discoveries and I knew where I needed to head next, alongside the girl. Making my way back to the mines, I got ambushed by some weird dog called Moonless. I tore it apart without hesitation as I thought it wanted to do the same to me. I later found out this is one of the possible companions and I even ended up bringing it with me later. So watching this part now that I know, hurts bad. I'm sorry, doggo. Going through the mines, I found out you can explode rubble if you have an explosive vial in your possession. So I did just that and created a passage where I continued to explore. Heading down the corridor, I ran into another lizard enemy that I quickly disposed of. Interacting with a table, I found a diary of an unknown guard. It talks about how the remaining troops in this dungeon took refuge in these mines in hopes that the Kingdom of London would send help and save them. Their hope was running low. He mentions Captain Rudimer setting foot into some underground city of cave dwellers where he traded a bizarre artifact for food and supplies. They eventually ran out of those supplies and the captain losing his mind in the process, running into the dark dungeons on his own, wearing nothing but a sheet of cloth. We are going to die down here, aren't we? He asks himself. In another room, I found a skeleton of some person sitting on a chair. There are claw marks all over him and many of his bones are missing as well. In the room next to it, there was another corpse split in half with limbs chopped off and a cleaver stuck in his head. Cannibalism. That's how they tried to survive later down the line, by feeding on their own men. I tried exploding another closed passage only for the entire mines to collapse on me, leaving me to die. Okay, so trying to navigate through the mines, attempt number 2. Instead of exploding the passage, I just walked around it and I stumbled upon a sword stuck in a rock. An obvious Excalibur reference, the only difference is, it is possible to put a sword out, but the mines once again crumble and you die. The sword is named Blue Sin and it's one of the strongest weapons in the game. I had no clue how to get it without dying, so I had to leave it for now. Further right, I noticed the ladder. Climbing down, we've discovered another worship cult. This time they're a little more extreme. These people here wearing wolf masks are most definitely the same people that got stuck and ran out of food. Their only solution, cannibalism, as we've noticed on a skeleton. They worship Goroth and are stuck eating either their own or their colleagues' flesh until there's nothing left. You can join in and replenish your hunger, but same as the bunny code, second time is a coin toss and I'd rather not risk it. Returning to the entrance, I encountered a new enemy, a man with nothing but a sheet of cloth around his waist, an iron spiked weapon and his head being a crow. His name is Crowmauler, but wait, we've already met him, haven't we? At the start where Shorter resides, behind iron bars, he escaped the cell and started hunting us. I was curious and tried picking a fight with him.
Oh shit.
He attacked right off the bat, breaking our limbs. The fight wasn't going well at all. I kept missing my attacks and he was relentless. I thought I had a chance until... He took the girl out in one swing, pecking her entire head off. I finally managed to land an attack on his arm so he could stop mauling me, yet the crows that he seemed to command clawed my eyes out. I tried healing up, but once again, using his spec ability, he one-shot me. He's an extremely strong opponent. I knew from now on I had to prepare a lot harder to take him down. Walking all the way back to the start of the dungeon, trying to find anything interesting, I encountered a merchant. He was selling interesting items like potions of full healing, potions of full sanity, or something that interested me the most, potion of life. I didn't have money for it, but I knew damn well the second I found 15 coins I would come back to buy it, in hopes I would be able to revive fallen crew members. Back in the mines, I thought I was in a maze, not finding any new paths or anything to progress. I tried going in different directions at the beginning, and I eventually wound up in a new corridor, where a mysterious person was lurking around the corner. I chose to show myself in hopes he would be friendly, which is usually a mistake in this game, but I was lucky this time. He introduced himself and walked off. His name is Nosramus. Haven't heard of the name yet, so I wanted to know more. I followed him. Instead of going up towards him, I went downwards, finding knight armor laying on top of some tomb. Touching it starts a fight against an old knight. I tried escaping, but the attempt was unsuccessful, so I was left with no other choice but to fight. Attacking parts of his armor with even your weakest strike makes it disappear and uncover some of his skin, which looked dark and really old. His attacks were annoying as every swing he took. If he hits, you are losing a limb. Suddenly, a second knight joined the fight. His own spectre? Now I was fighting two of them at the same time? I had no clue how to kill either of them, so I just continued taking out pieces of his armor until I took down the helmet. It's no longer a person, only old, lifeless skin being used as a vessel. Now with the Dead by Daylight update releasing, it really reminds me of the Unknown Killer. Look at them. With only one piece of armor left, attacking it won us the fight. I lost the girl again, as well as both my arms. Finally entering Nosramus' place. He's an alchemist residing down in the mines. Telling him we're looking for a person, he said he knows exactly what we're looking for, and then he's in the dungeon a few floors down. He also mentions to hurry, because his time is running short. Asking him how long he's been here, he said for an eternity, studying all different kinds of knowledge about blood magic, deities, gods, and finally nature. That's why he lives in mines. As he says, there is still a primal rule, very much alive here, and because he can feel the presence of gods more vividly. I was curious if he was here alone and found out he did have a companion, but we killed it. The old knight was just a soul bound to an armor who was protecting the entrance into Nosramus' laboratory. And here in his laboratory I found my very first hexen table. Think of it as a skill tree / enchantment table from Minecraft. We get our first look at the skill tree of Fear and Hunger after like 10 hours. There are multiple skill paths you can take. There's the Endless path, where we have most of our skills, then Domination, Torment, and finally Enlightenment. Those are the only ones described with words. The right side of the skill tree are symbols only. We have 2 circles with lines. You can find it on the sacrificial altars or on coins. An eye, a regular cross, and finally the reverse R. We've seen half of these symbols already, haven't we? The cross symbol only has one ability, and that's the blood portal. The 2 circles have magic abilities like pyromancy, necromancy, blood golem, and hurting. The eye symbol has pheromones, loving whispers, healing whispers, and the reverse R has needleworms, mastery over insect, or even flock of crows which we've encountered fighting the crow mauler. Now, remember when I found the books about Sylvian and Groroth and the types of magic they taught us? Sylvian with the flower magic and Groroth with blood magic, flower magic being mostly used as healing and blood magic as damaging spells. I know I've just asked you like 3 questions at once, I'm so sorry, just hear me out. The 2 circles or rings have abilities like hurting, necromancy, blood golem, and the eye symbol with abilities like healing and loving whispers. Off of that we could decipher to whom these symbols actually belong to. At least that's how I found out and connected the dots. If there's any other indication, inform me in the comments. The 2 rings are Groroth and the eye is Sylvian. Now we've already encountered a statue with a man on a cross and the reverse R symbol in the earlier dungeons, but with the statues only having 3 prayer options and the reverse R having none, I'm going to assume the cross is Olmir, but we're yet to find any explanation of his origin. Also, by examining the abilities of the reverse R symbol, it mostly consists of either insects or animals, whereas everything else is more traditional magic. And now, after we found the skill tree, I can explain the souls as well. Kahara the mercenary is born with the Endless Soul. The Endless Soul is symbolized as a sign of heroism or leadership, also supposed to be one of the strongest souls in lore. People born with this soul are predisposed to do great things and go beyond their boundaries set on them by life itself. Unlockable skills that the Endless Soul grants you are lockpicking, steal, Engarde, and dash. Two of them are self-explanatory. Now what does dash and engarde do? Engarde allows you to have an extra turn in combat, and dash increases your movement speed while exploring. All four are probably one of the best skills in the entire game. Enki, the enlightened one. Users who are born with the enlightened soul are usually scholars who have natural magical abilities. Those born with this soul will be driven, as the name suggests, by enlightenment and trying to break down barriers. Even though it sounds cool on paper, the skills an enlightened soul user possesses are very limited. There's only two: counter magic and greater blood magic. Counter magic does just what its name says. It resists or mends the effects of magical attacks. And lastly, greater blood magic increases the potential of blood magic, allowing you to use better versions of other blood magic spells. It's more of a buff than a spell in itself. Ultimately, we're left with a tormented soul, whose owner is Regenwolder, sign of struggle and endurance, given to someone who endures unimaginable anguish and strives beyond it forever to be tormented by their pain and suffering. Skills this soul allows you to have in game are all different and can be described by a singular adjective. The skills are Devour, Warcry and Marksmanship. Devour gives you the option to eat the carcasses of your enemies to ease your hunger. Warcry provokes the enemy to targeting you. And Marksmanship allows you to kill enemies without having to enter combat. Every character has unique starting skills which are in themselves very useful and fit the character's personality and combat style. Now I know there's 4 playable characters and I haven't talked about the last one, the knight, and that's because I'm yet to encounter him. Or her. Let's not fucking assume genders. I found heads impaled on pikes. Heading in their direction, I climbed the ladder where I found some person getting their head bashed with a rock by some blue creature. Going closer scares one of them away and starts a fight with the one beating him.
Why do they all have these big fuck?
I wanted to save the person, so I went into the fight with no arms, and since I somehow learned magic, I took him down with one spell. Talking to him, we learned that it's the knight. The knight's name is DRC, also it's a female. See? Don't judge a book by its cover, I guess. She's a member of the Knights of the Midnight Sun. As she comes from Rondon, she explains that most people over there worship the god Olmir. She's come here to save her captain by the name of Legarde. Asking her if she wants to join your party, she accepts right away. If you remember a bit of lore that was mentioned throughout this video, Regenwolder, DRC and us, Kahara, are all in this dungeon to find a man who's locked down here. Even Nosrammer's heard of him. Could it be that all 3 of us are looking for the same person? That's something I was wondering about at this point, but moving on, how much importance does this peculiar man hold in the story as we're all here for him? After a tough fight with the yellow mage, I ended up losing my last leg and I couldn't move anymore. So the question what happens after you lose all your limbs has been answered. Time to go again. On my way back into the mines, I took a little detour and ran into Moonless. This time I decided to not kill it. I gave it some rotten meat and noticed it wasn't aggressive at all. More frightened than in a fighting mood, except the dumb fucking girl still hit it. After feeding in one more piece of rotten meat, I got to choose whether I wanted to let it join my party or not. Of course, I took the dog into my party because he's just an absolute cutie, look at him. Who's a good little boy? Or girl? You are, Moonless. You are. I regrouped with DRC and now I had a full squad. I was ready to fight anything in our path with DRC, Moonless and the girl by my side. I made my way into the cave dweller village to look for the artifact Captain Rudimer gave them in exchange for food. During exploration, I found this rope on the table inside one of their huts. Making my way up the village, I ended up reaching some altar of darkness. Going inside, killing the guard, I entered the only room in this hut where I found a weird cube-shaped object being placed on some alien pedestal. I took it. Its name is Cube of the Depths, and for now I had no clue what it was for. Leaving the hut and going a bit higher, I noticed a little bridge built with planks heading to the mouth of some gigantic fish. It seemed to me like you were supposed to go there, but I couldn't find a way to open it. After heading back, I found a hole where I could use the rope I found in the hut. I tied the rope and climbed down, where I once again ended up near the Wolfman's coat. So it's just like an alternate path to get back from the village, even though you can't climb the rope back up, so that's pretty dumb. I ran into Crowmoller once again. I felt pretty confident having DRC and Moonless on my side this time around. I tried to fight him once again. Taking out his leg and his weapon in a single turn, I was off to a really good start right away, but I knew I had to be wary of his peck ability. He used it and took DRC out right away. After taking out the legs, I kept trying to hit his head. I missed each and every one of my attacks and ended up losing Moonless. Yep, another guy dead. I gave up on his head and went after its last arm. This time he killed the girl. On my last 3 attempts, I started attacking his torso as it was the only body part I managed to hit, and I somehow won. Losing every single one of my companions, I stood there alone, in silence. I searched the crow mauler and found a crow emblem key. I knew the exact place where I could use it. I remember that all the way at the start of the game, in the place where I encountered my first enemy, there was a steel door which couldn't be opened with any key or by lockpicking. When interacting with the door, it said it was locked and that there's an emblem of a crow ingrained on it. I went all the way back to the start to test my theory. You hear voices inside your head.
You miserable mortal worm. You wish to use me.
There was a sword standing on top of a pile of bodies. You get asked if you want the sword. I said yes and took it. The miasma.
Jesus! That's so strong.
Miasma is one hell of a sword, with the attack stat being 122, which is, if you couldn't tell, a lot. There is a dark side to all this power the sword grants you though. This sword craves blood and fighting, and if your sanity falls below a certain threshold, there are scripted events in the dungeon where you just black out and end up killing your entire party. So great power comes with great risk. Stuck for several hours, I ran to the top of the mines where I entered level 7, the catacombs. In the catacombs there's this purple stuff covering the entire floor and it sounds like leaves or grass when you step on it. Also, I ran into some mysterious organ here as well. It has veins coming from it brought deep underground. It's connected to something bigger. After cutting it, there's still some movement in the veins, suggesting that whatever is connected to this thing continues to live. As I was going further, I got absolutely fucking jump scared by something named Night Lurch. I fought it off with ease and continued. Also, I met Enki here as well. Asking him where we're at, he tells us that we're at the gateway to the darkness, and that these are the last man-made walls we are about to see. After getting ambushed by an elite guard, I lost Moonless and I ran from the catacombs into a tower with a really long staircase going all the way to the prison. And then there's this chair, where if you sit on it, you get a cutscene. I speculated if this is either a God of War reference or a DMC reference. But since he mentioned in an interview he took inspiration from DMC3, it was probably the iconic Virgil pose. Once we finally make it all the way to the top, we get to unlock this door where we now have the upper dungeons connected with the catacombs, which is a huge time saver. As I was going to save, I fought some priests. One of them dropped some purifying talisman, which allows you to open locked doors with these weird symbols on them. Now, behind this door is a room with a hexen table. It's all the way at the start, and if you manage to kill the priest, you can unlock it right away without even having to go to the mine. Back at the courtyard, I ran towards the rubble to try using an explosive vial. I created a passage and went to the other side, where I had to fight dogs. There was this huge tree with multiple bodies lying around it, with an entrance and something resembling a woman with long hair. I ventured inside, it's called Thicket. Walking through it, I couldn't find anything, so I just left it alone for now. Roaming around, interacting with every wall, trying to find something to progress, a floating head appears.
What the fuck is this?
I somehow triggered a fight. When picking a target, you can either hit the head or some darkness behind them. I immediately ran away, so I have no clue what happens if you wait. I mean, I do have a clue, but I'm not gonna tell you yet. Going back to the catacombs, I found a huge ancient door. You can open it using the cube. Walking through, the purple grass slowly fades as you go deeper into this ancient place. With damaged statues and the floor being overgrown, it felt as if this place had been abandoned for quite a while. I found this weird chessboard looking thing where interacting with one of these statues, it tells you it's too heavy to move. And a zombie crawled out from one of these holes, so that was a pleasant surprise. On the right there was another room with a chessboard, but now it was being guarded by a scarecrow. It started shooting poison darts at me and I was unable to reach it, so I kept getting hit, and after I approached him, he just ran away. Now all three of us were poisoned and I only had 2 white vials, so there's a choice to be made here. Who am I going to save? I chose the RC as he's the stronger fighter out of us 3 and he would enable me to explore more stuff before I'd have to ultimately reset. The scarecrow was waiting right around the corner. His name is Body Snatcher and he has 4 arms, 2 holding poison dart pipes and 1 holding a dagger. He killed the girl, so I guess having cured the RC was the better option after all. Above the third chessboard there was a door like the ancient one we walked through earlier, with no way of opening or breaking it. Going through this huge doorway at the end of this passage, I entered the ancient city. One thing that immediately caught my attention was this very relaxing but also ominous ambient music that started playing. As if I had reached the unreachable, this forgotten relic of the past, not meant to be seen by human eyes, at least not anymore. Standing in front of the gate into the city, the RC starts asking the real questions. What else is waiting for us on the other side, in the ancient city? So of course, as I've been doing my entire playthrough, I didn't take the main path, I took the alternate one, as I always want to explore everything and find nothing. Finally, walking through the gate, I ended up in the ancient city square. Once again looking completely abandoned, dark barrels having rotten food in them, and yet there's still useful stuff in the crates. There's also this locked door and huge beacons you can light up to see more. Reaching the top of the stairs, there's some weird figure blocking an open doorway. Supposedly, I'm not worthy enough to pass. I need to suffer through my personal trials and torment on the loss of my close ones. If I go through this pain without losing sight of my dreams and goals, then he shall let me pass. And asking him any of these 3 questions, he gives you the same speech. I gave up on trying to talk to him, and now my curiosity took over as I walked up to this weird statue. It's some beacon of the depths, where if you use your cube, it takes you to the past. The city now being completely lit up by sun, the doorway closed and the statue in the middle fixed. Also, these weird shadowy people are walking around now. I followed them inside a house and they disappeared. Mahabre inside is the name of this place. I recognize the name. Mahabre. On my 3rd playthrough, I found a book called Mahabre. The description reads, a book about the ancient city, Mahabre.
The sights of Mahabre. You have seen them too, haven't you? In your dreams, you wander for one lifetime with silhouette of this city in horizon. You have seen the twin towers that rise next to a black night sky. Those macabre obelisks telling tales of some older, more cruel age. You have seen the grand gate with its maddening murals and spirals, patterns beyond understanding. It's not like the sound of wind howling between these hollow streets wasn't enough. You also hear the sound of local residents, even while all comprehension would dictate that this place is long abandoned. You still hear them. You are not alone in this part of the world. In your dreams you have seen it, haven't you? The city of Mahabre, the city of gods. Did you know it exists here?
The city of Mahabre, the city of gods. The place where our entire journey led us to, where all our questions should be answered. At least I thought so. Standing in front of me was a tall golden robot. Approaching it starts a fight. Its name is Uterus. As I was attacking its arms, an embryo fell out of his stomach. It started crawling towards me before it eventually stood up and a knife spawned in its hands. After taking out its mother, I quickly found out that the main threat is the embryo. He attacked my summoned blood golem and caused a bleeding effect, so I knew I didn't want to get hit by that. After finally defeating it, I didn't get any loot from its corpse, and since there's no reward plus they're way too tanky, it's not worth it. Walking around this hole triggers an event where through it a creature looks at us and then disappears. On the easiest difficulty, nothing happens. What I didn't realize is that playing on the hardest difficulty actually triggers different events and scenes. For example, right here. If the girl was still in my party, this creature would grab her hand and take her from us. Or at the start of the game, the dogs that chase you in the yard would chase you all the way into the dungeon. There's numerous other things that happen differently on hard mode, and my favorite one is a scene where the Chroma Lord just straight up walks through a wall in the dungeon to ambush you. It looks like it was taken straight out of Resident Evil 7, but hard mode isn't an option for completely new people to pick. It makes the experience twice as cruel with zero visibility in the dark and other stuff that just makes it much harder, so I'm glad I didn't let my pride pick that option. I still died plenty, I can only wonder how long it would have taken otherwise. Finally making it out of this building, I ended up in the Mahabre Temple district. As you may have noticed, my FPS dropped all the way down to 20. This is a reoccurring thing that's exclusively specific to Mahabre. On numerous instances, walking out of a building would cause huge frame drops that would usually be fixed by pausing and unpausing, but it's still pretty annoying. Going up, I stumbled upon this huge spider creature. Also, I know it's late into the game to point this out, but why does everything have to have their genitals exposed? I googled it to find an answer since it's never addressed in the game. Some Reddit user pointed out that the in-universe reason for guards is that the darkness corrupts them based on their personality. They are violent wardens who use their power to do what they please with their victims. Then the other option is that it could be a way of portraying the lack of humanity these things have. In most places, it's normal for humans to wear clothing to cover their junk. It's usually very shocking and disturbing to see someone who isn't. Specifically for the guards, it being so misshapen and grotesque makes it convey that something is very wrong. Both make sense, and I wonder if the creator thought of that or if he had something else in mind. Anyway, there's also a little bit more text that I had to cover up as it's post later parts of the game. We'll talk about this later. I didn't want to try and fight it, so I just waited for it to go by us to continue following the shadowy people. I took a little detour into some creepy building that looked like a laboratory. There's a bloody table, same as in the torture chamber, and some weird monster inside this egg-shaped thing, and a book with
Why won't it work?
written inside of it. I went further and made my way into the grand library. After entering, I witnessed 2 embryos eating their mother. I thought these things were robots, but I guess I was mistaken, as they are clearly guts. They stood up and tried jumping me, which immediately scared the absolute shit out of me. I found this book called The Fellowship Chapter 1 Original. Now you see, I already had The Fellowship Chapter 1, but without the original label on it, so I read both. The fake one talks about events that happened in the year 809 after their birth of Christ, the Ascended One. The Fellowship consisted of 5 people: Francois the Dominating One, Nilvan the Endless One, Voltio the Enlightened One, Kambara the Tormented One, and finally the Forgotten One, whose story bears no listeners as he never aspired for the same greatness. They were formed to seek the older gods who left humanity without guidance and aid in times of great peril. Supposedly there existed an ancient tomb to ancient city of Mahavre that worked as a hub for multiple different planes of existence, a place where a man could meet his maker. Those who set their foot inside would forever wander the plains of the afterlife. The Fellowship was trying to help mankind choose their own destiny and build the future they deserved. And that's it. Now me being an absolute idiot, as I was going to read the fake one to compare it to the original, I thought it was exactly the same, because I read the same book twice. The difference between the original and fake one is that Mahabra is now Mahavre, and that's it. So there were 5 people trying to seek out other gods to change the fate of humanity. 5th one giving up on their goal, and 4 of them having the same souls as our playable characters. My guess was that the books were about us, and I was wrong, but not entirely. Then right in the next bookshelf I found a book about Omir, the only god that we didn't know anything about. Studies of Omir 1, born from a virgin mother, a god walking amongst men. Omir would gather 12 apostles from his most trusted companions. Together they were to bring back the old world order. Kings and sultans wouldn't stand idle when a man of undeniable godlike posture came down to their golden city gates. They captured Omir, and the newborn god would be nailed onto a cross with arms spread wide. Omir ended up ascending. He became a symbol of hope and domination. Spending 3 days and nights at Mahabra, he returned among men. With his mourning 11 apostles, he would murder the kings and sultans of the time and bringing back the old world order. Does this story remind you of someone? Cross, widespread arms, revived himself after 3 days, Virgin Mother. No? Jesus fucking Christ, guys, it's Jesus Christ. Everything is a straight knockoff, except the murdering kings and sultans thing. I don't remember the OG Jesus doing that. He's the Ascended One, the one that left the world in great peril and who the Fellowship wanted to replace. And right after discovering that, my run came to an end. I got ambushed by 2 embryos and died. Filled with even more knowledge, I knew I was heading in the right direction. Going through the tomb, I explored it a little more instead of going to Mahabra right away, and I found another Doctor Who phone booth. After using the cube to go to the past, there are a couple differences. One is that you can now push these chess pieces, and we guessed correctly that it's a puzzle you need to solve. Now this took a fair bit of time to figure out, since you can push these pieces into corners which are inaccessible, and to reset them you have to go back to the present and then to the past again. The second major difference is these things moving around and guarding the tomb. There's 2 of them. One is walking the path leading into Mahabra, and the other one is in this corridor guarding the path to the beacon. And of course, for video purposes, I wanted to fight it, and the story repeats itself. It was finally time to do the puzzle, and the first one was pretty easy compared to the other 2. Second puzzle done. Also, in between these puzzles, I decided to try my luck at killing the red monster guys, and I succeeded. He doesn't drop any items, and you can't skin him either. Now that I figure out this puzzle, I could proceed through the ancient door. There's a ladder that leads to the actual tomb of the god that's laying here.
The presence of God. Jesus Christ, a fucking dick again. An old god rests here.
In my notes I wrote down thinking that this god is Grorov, but it's actually Omir, the god that disappeared and supposedly ascended, leaving the mankind in great peril. But that's probably just a story they made up when he actually just died. There's a door with the ancient markings that I couldn't open because I had no talismans. You can gather up a couple books or scrolls down here, so it's not all that useless. The very next day I was blessed with an idea. Does the door stay open if you go there during the present? And the answer is yes. Now one very noticeable thing has changed. The god is now only skeleton and bones.
Oh shit.
If anyone else was thinking that the god buried here was not an actual person but only a statue, well, here's proof. So Omir was a really big dude. Other thing that changed is this marked door is now gone, and there's also an extra chest that appears in the middle of the other room. After opening it, I was given an old passage key. Its purpose was unknown to me at the time. I went to check out the marked door path that was now open, with only a couple urns, scrolls that couldn't be collected, and a steep ramp going down to a huge hole at the end. I knew this room was probably going to be of some use in the past, not in the present. Yeah, and also I did actually jump down this hole. Legit, if you think about it, I wasted so much time and on some occasion progress only for you to see every possible outcome. Yes, I'm talking to you, dear viewer. Okay, no, I was lying. It wasn't just for you. My curiosity took over most of the time. Believe me, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep at night knowing I did not jump down that hole. What if there's some secret ending? You never know, do you? It was finally time to go back to the ancient city. Walking the streets and entering every possible door in Mahabray, I finally got somewhere important. The town square, I think. There are 3 creatures standing here and a beacon. Talking to the figure with a weird robe on, we found out it's one of the guardians of this city, who's supposed to protect Mahabray with his life, until some king returns to this land. The king created this city and he will supposedly come back one day. He does not know where the king went. If we question the length of this king's absence, his answer doesn't really specify any date, but from what he said it's probably been a long time since he left. I've just looked up the definition of Eons and goddamn. A billion years? Moving on to the second figurine. He tells us he wants to grow up to be a warrior. He's one of the younger created figurines and that means they grow and age as well. He says that he wants to become like his older brother, guessing that it's the guardian we just talked to. Now the third figurine. He's a chief, or that's just what he calls himself. If we ask him about this place, he tells us we are in the city of gods, Mahabray, and saying that gods used to reside here once upon a time. He mentions that the new ones are sleeping in their beds. He also sells books, so he's pretty alright. After talking to all of them, I noticed this door frame on the left, so I went through and ended up in some weird pit of enlightenment. After approaching the book and praying here, you appear in some grand hall with huge masked people staring at you. Welcome. It's the new gods, but why are there so many? They ask us what subject we want to know more about. Now at the time I had no clue of the way they function, so I just straight up typed sentences into scrolls. That's the incorrect way of doing it. You just simply need to write the name of whatever you're curious about. There are so many things you can ask, and what's truly impressive is the fact that even though you only got 3 questions, the community gathered all of them up. This bit of enlightenment is the #1 source of lore in this game. It's where Miro explained most of the enemies, gods, encounters and characters, all in this one place. You can ask about him as well, and it gives you a pretty funny answer. By the way, I found this little cool thing you get to do in this game only after like 20 hours of playtime. Instead of drinking alcohol to fill your sanity up, you can smoke opium. I know I've already mentioned this at the very beginning of the video, but this is the part where I found out. Walking north, I finally ended up finding the Tower of Endless, the one place where you can save your game without worrying about failing a coin toss. So, I made my way up and slept in the bed. I fell asleep and suddenly appeared in Kingdom of Rondon, the very same place the knights in the lower dungeons came from. It was misty and rainy, with the streets being very dimly lit. I approached the first thing I noticed, and it was this poster talking about missing children. As many as 13 children have been reported missing since the beginning of the year. Strange. Roaming the streets of Rondon, I noticed this very convenient red glowing door and I went through. I'll play the audio for you real quick. There was someone having intercourse in one of the beds, so at first I thought I broke in at the wrong time. But after walking further, I realized it wasn't someone's home, it was a brothel. Walking all the way to the end, I found myself. Our wife's a hoe. As she's pregnant with our baby, she's selling out her body and supposedly it brings in even more customers. You freaky fucks. We get our first look at the story of our character Kahara, also called Zlobor. For now. Our guy here probably felt like a failure not being able to take care of his family, and that's what brought him here. He received an offer for a lot of silver to rescue a man locked in the dungeons of fear and hunger. That's pretty sad. Not just this story and motivation, but also everything he's going through down here just to provide for his pregnant wife. I left the brothel and right behind it was another house that you could enter. Walking down the stairs, I encountered a little boy crawling from the darkness of this cellar. Suddenly he got dragged back and the text said some eyes vanished that were supposed to be visible. There's a loud meow and the child's presence disappears. Was this connected to the posters about the missing children? Quick disclaimer, what happened to me in the footage was a bug. It said you don't feel the presence of the child or the entity and some eyes were supposed to disappear. When I played through this part again, you can actually see the figure that dragged the kid back into the darkness. I mean, you probably already guessed who it was. The loud meow gave it away. It's the pocket cat. Now it all connects to the book stories and about how he steals children. You are literally getting items from him by trading in children. He's behind all the disappearances in the city of London. That's pretty much all there is to the lore of Pocket Cat in the first Fear and Hunger. I know in Fear and Hunger 2 he plays a huge role, but if I was going to interconnect both the first and the second game into one video, I would still be recording footage, not writing a script. There's also these bandaged people wandering around that will wake you up if they touch you. Walking north, I ended up at the quarantine zone in front of the city's exit with a plague doctor standing over the infected people. Talking to the sick, they blamed the older gods for this sickness. I made my way into the middle of the city. I encountered dark priests performing a ritual with Enki impaled on this creepy statue.
I'm ready, Olmir. Take me,
said the dark priest. Suddenly, some weird ghost figures started appearing around them. They did something and made Enki change his mind, as he suddenly disappeared alongside the priests. I encountered two priests a couple meters away from the sacrifice ritual that was taking place. Talking to them, they told me that they expect the new gods... Wait, I'll rephrase that. They believe that the new gods will bring them paradise and basically confirming that they don't like the older gods.
Do we become the gods? If you think about it. It's a story of 4 people on a quest, because if you read the Fellowship books, it's a story of 4 people going on a journey. Basically, they go through challenges where the journey tests the strength of their friendship and if they're ever gonna doubt each other. So is this about us? And will we or can we become the new gods at this place?
What's this dude yapping about? But I mean, we'll see. We'll see if I was right. After witnessing all the events of this town, we can now proceed through the bridge. Outlander arrived home too late. His family and friends got slaughtered by the Knights of the Midnight Sun. Who they claimed they came for a very specific reason, because of some artifact they brought home to Vinland. Following the trail of dead bodies, we arrive at a hut. Visions of Outlander distressed. I'm guessing his family got caught in the massacre as well. Entering the hut, we found this old lady sitting in the darkness. Going closer, we see she's just weaving on her loom. Of course, as she was just a regular old lady, I tried talking to her. My dog bit her, but that happens sometimes, you know? Spoiler alert, it's not going to be as simple as that. Of course, the lady will turn into a huge wooden monstrosity with full intent to kill me. See, I need to start trusting my dog more. We've cut her down with ease. The old granny has no real threatening attacks and her limbs are easy to destroy. After that, she's just a defenseless old granny waiting for her demise.
They believe you're the one from the prophecies.
These ancient texts are about a child's world, boy. Of course, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't use them to my advantage.
But really, many things are scarily accurate in the prophecy. It talks about the fair-haired man and the one who rivals gods in both power and beauty.
I thought all the older gods were ugly as hell. Don't tell me you buy that stuff too. Nilwan of the new gods is supposedly beautiful, just as the tormented one used to be.
The texts also speak. He who unites the warring states, not by the power of the golden staff, but by the power of a dozen pitchforks.
Well, all the kings hate me at this point, so that one line I can agree with. I will strive to unify these lines, be it in the prophecies or not. No matter the cost. But I feel like I'm really close to achieving my goals, but the last step is not clear, still shrouded in the mist. I'm not certain if this is the path to achieve all this.
What do you mean? You're just a step away from founding your own kingdom and becoming one of the most fabled rulers of our time. You'd make a great ruler, I'm sure of it. Common people love you already.
I'm sure of it, she says. What difference would it make anyway? History has proven time and time again that order, virtue, tranquility don't last. I need something definite, something pure. I need to ascend above the kings and queens of our times. The last step isn't shrouded in the mist, it's waiting in the depths of the darkness.
Lagarde, I need to ask what this campaign in the north is all about. I don't quite understand the importance of expanding our reign all the way over there. Frankly, I'm afraid such campaign could have negative impact on your reputation.
Thank you for your honest words, Knight. However, my mind is set. The campaign in the north is vital to my plans. They have something that belongs to me.
Something that belongs to you? What are you talking about?
I have to reach greater heights. This is the only way.
Oh, new one, I must ask you a favor. Our time has come. This form's existence isn't the answer we were looking for. For mankind to break free, we need more. We need someone equal in size and stature to them. Please, I ask of you, just get my child out of here. Take her to the heart of darkness. I would gladly give my soul to you if you were to agree on these terms. Thank you.
Okay, just hold on a little second. Let's break all of this lore dump down. This game has been filled with scraps of lore for the entire 20 plus hours of my playtime, only to give me every character backstory all at once in a single sequence of events. We've met our character Kahara. His wife works at a brothel. As she was pregnant, as a proper man, Kahara wanted to provide by taking on this job for a lot of silver to rescue so many of the dungeons of fear and hunger. Then there is Enki. Found him nailed on this weird statue in the middle of the city where he was going to sacrifice himself. Suddenly, weird visions start appearing around him. The Black Priest changes his mind and asks his servants to help him down from the cross, where he disappears. Next is the Outlander. I'm guessing he was out in the woods hunting as he arrived late to a battle happening on their soil. The Knights of the Midnight Sun invaded the north in hopes of retrieving some artifact located there. His family and friends get killed, so he seeks out revenge. Next, we see the backstory of the knight, DRC, but we actually barely see her story. We see more of their leader, Lagarde. His goal was to unite all the lands, but not through becoming a king, but something more than that, which he intended on finding in the darkness. Then lastly, a new god appears in front of us by the name of Nilvan. Nilvan, a female new god with a swollen belly, tells us we need to save her child and bring her to the heart of darkness. Our girl team member, clearly distressed, seems shook by the sight of this new god. She gives us a choice, whether we agree to take this quest on or not. Once we agree, she gives us her endless soul and disappears, where we eventually wake up in our bed in the endless tower. So, why was the knight down in these dungeons? The alchemist in the mines telling us of some leader who got captured? Our job is to retrieve a knight locked here? Ragnvaldr is here to seek revenge, but on who? Who else? All of us are here for the same reason. Well, except Enki. We're all down here to get to Lagarde. How much importance does this man hold? Who or where is he? I tried opening the huge ancient doors in the past and to no surprise they didn't open, but we were given a clue. There's a keyhole in the shape of a king's crown. Now we need to figure out how to get that key. Also, if you are curious about this spider guy, his name is Harvestman. I tried fighting him and found him surprisingly easy to kill, but I'm guessing I was lucky to not die, as the scene that plays after being killed by him is just brutal. Walking around the library, I noticed something very interesting. I've wrote it down as the statue of God equals the headless wizard, 2 question marks. Looking back on it now, the resemblance is uncanny. Just look at it, it's literally the same head model with different hair. Is the floating head down in the dungeons a god that was cast away from Mahabray, or did he leave on his own? Who knows? I found the Fellowship Chapter 2 original. It's about the 5 members of the Fellowship reaching the city of Mahabray. After beating all the challenges the old gods laid for them, the seed of doubt was planted into the mind of the 5th member. The 5th member, the Forgotten One, was a scholar of many arts and sciences and as such, believed what was laid in front of his eyes. The older gods created the grand lie. A lie about the greater scheme of things. The grand lie told of the way the older gods directed mankind, that many had gone before the same trials as the Fellowship and yet nothing had changed for the better as eons went by. The 4 members ended up proceeding with the initial mission and became the new gods we know today. The Forgotten One was never again seen or heard. Now, the difference between the original and the fake one. In the newer adaptation, the 5th member of the Fellowship wasn't lied to by the gods. He was the last trial for the 4 members, crafted by the older gods. His purpose in the grand scheme of things was to create doubt and unease between the Fellowship. He was crafted as the one that created the grand lie, when in reality, the old gods lied to him. You can notice one clear thing between the newer versions and the originals. The newer versions seem to pick a side, with the new gods completely disregarding who the 5th member was, and making him seem like a weakling who was never meant to be a god. Instead, he was made to be an obstacle for the Fellowship, when that just isn't true. Walking down the stairs to get to the ground floor, there's 5 mannequins posing in front of some ancient door. You can interact with and change their pose. Great. There's gonna be another puzzle that's going to take me 60 business hours to solve. I made my way into the back alleys of Mahabray, where I found some weird place called Temple of Torment level 1. Entering, you are greeted with this huge pit where I had a huge decision to make. Do I jump in and lose a lot of progress? Let me get to see what happens. Or do I continue? I chose to continue this time, but don't worry, I am going to jump into it eventually. Temple of Torment level 2. It's basically a prison of some sorts, with one of the red creatures still chained up inside. The sound it makes once it notices you is spine-chilling. Going to the top of this prison, we find this weird section with levers and chains. The game asks you if you wanna put the RC on the chains. I declined as I did not plan on losing a member of my squad. At least I assumed that's what was going to happen. By the way, here's me jumping down into the pit. And no, I did not go all the way back to save the game. What else did I expect? I explored the huge cave located in the pit. There were a bunch of crates with just mining equipment and nothing else. Traveling back into the present, I tried to find a different path into the temple. I ran into a problem. Most of the bridges in the present collapsed and you couldn't get past them. I threw a stone into it and it hit something on its way down. I had full confidence in jumping into the pit this time and I survived without injuries. Doesn't happen often, so savor this moment. After entering the cave, there's this table with different holes for various items. You get a strong spear after you collect all 4, but I never bothered with this. I only placed the skeletal arm the girl was using. Going further into the cave, we encountered countless faceless yellow figurines just standing around in here. It's the cave system we encountered in the past. The bottom of that pit. It's been furnished and expanded with the mining equipment missing from the crates. Just food now. You can climb up into the prison through the cave, which unlocks a whole new path for us, available for both past and present. I tried interacting with everything down here and I ended up putting a sample of my blood into one of those huge glass containers. I created an empty husk, a clone of myself with no soul or life in its eyes. On my way to the tower, I ran into another new enemy, a white creepy masked dude with hair all over his body. Or fur, I don't know. Right before the exit, there was a colorful dragon pierced by multiple spears and with his head chopped off. You can take the war scythe out of him. It's a weak melee with the only unique feature being that its wings are AoE. They deal extremely low damage though, so it's not worth it. I got noticed by one of the creatures and couldn't outrun it, so I was forced to fight. The name of the creature is the Lord of Flies. He smells like shit and deals poison damage. I ended up running this time as I wanted to save beforehand. Right next to the tower there was a little crack in the wall. I squeezed through and found a dead Rondon knight lying on the floor motionless. In the tower, if you go there during the present, there's this ritual circle in the middle. I was curious, so I tried doing the show love action now that I had the RC with me, and it worked. Weird bubbles started forming around us, and after it all happened, I was blessed with marriage of flesh. I had to name myself again. I became this grotesque creature with one side of my body being comically enlarged as if I was a serial gooner and my face disfigured. Also, I'm naked now, which does not make my job any easier as I'm going to have to edit all of this out. Exploring the downtown of Ancient City, I tried collecting rocks for my journey, and even though I was able to walk behind this rubble, I couldn't get out. One more into the collection of game-ending bugs this game offers. At least I got to undo the marriage, so it wasn't all for nothing. On day 187 of exploring Mahabray in the present, I got to this bridge where there was the ancient guardian protecting it. Interacting with him starts a fight. He's not one of the strongest enemies in the game, but he still proved his worth by killing the girl. At least I was free to take any risks from now on, knowing I'll just reset to bring her back as always. After taking him out, you get a red scarf off him. It's an item you can weigh, but it also plays a part in a certain ending. Another new encounter. A dual-wielding enemy called the Gaunt Knight. He's weak. You just hit his arms to disarm him, and once you disarm him, a text saying you managed to disarm, Sero's other sword appears. This isn't just some random knight enemy. He's called Sero. Killing him gives you one of the, if not the best, armor in the game. Remember Sir Seymour? I couldn't help but think of the comrades that entered this dungeon with him. Ludwig Buckman, the dead lady knight we found in the wall, and then finally Sero. How they got separated this badly is pretty bizarre. Buckman was at the torture segment, Seymour in front of the prison, and then finally Sero and the female knight all the way in the City of Gods. Searching the library once again, I read this book on the pedestal with a text saying, "O Lord give Soulstone," with all of them being separated into 3 sections. That's when I realized, that's how you use the damn empty scrolls. There's been hints of its use in every part of this game. I don't have all the locations written down in my notes, nor do I remember them. But long before I even knew what an empty scroll was, I noticed these open books having this exact writing, sometimes with not just gift, but teach as well. Empty scrolls are one of the best and most useful items you can find in the entire game. By typing out, "O Lord give," and asking for an item, the gods will give it to you. Whether it's claymore, Gaunt Knight armor, or even food, then Teach will do just that. Any spell or ability you need, just type it out and you'll get it. And I also found this book named The Passages of Mahabray, another extremely useful book. By reading it, you get transferred to past Mahabray for some time, essentially saving you from possible monsters or events. We also got to meet the new gods face to face. Francois, the dominating one, the tormented one, and then the third one, whom didn't get introduced at all. One of the gods was missing, as you may have noticed. Nilvan wasn't there, but we already met her. I was now in the library. The statues that were movable in the past were now stone, but they were standing in poses we needed for the past puzzle. At least 3 of them were. We needed to figure out the other 2. Going through the little science labs right next to the library, we found one of the statues covered in vines striking a certain pose. I took a screenshot and went to the other one. Another one of the statues laying on the ground. We got all 5 of them. It was time to do the puzzle. After getting it correctly, the stone door opened and it was time to uncover what's behind it. That was one of the new gods. We've climbed down after him. The Enlightened One was waiting for us down in the darkness of this almost endless library in its true form. A giant floating head with its brain exposed. The Enlightened One's name is Voltio. I started off attacking its brain. After the turn ended, the text said his right brain tries to come up with creative ways to combat and the left one is calculating the situation. This weird third eye thing appeared in the middle. I knew it was going to be his power move, so I started hitting it right away. The left brain hit the knight with a black orb, killing him in a single turn. The third eye was about to attack and I started to panic. Ultimately, not being able to destroy it in time, it cast Whispers of Goroth on me. Once again, the left brain casted Hurting on Moonless, killing him right away. Now I realized if I was going to take Voltio down, I needed to get rid of that left brain as soon as possible. My turns ran out and Whispers of Growth took me out as well. Right before the fight, I once again did my routine bookshelf exploration and I found an empty scroll. At last, I was able to test it out. Oh Lord, give Bone Shears. Look, I know Bone Shears deal a lot of damage and have a really high crit chance, but what you sacrifice by using them is the ability to guarantee hits. These dumb fucking nail scissors miss every 2 rounds, but with enough luck you could end fights in a single turn. I took the left brain right away with one of the luckiest Bone Shear crits I've ever witnessed in Fear and Hunger. That was so satisfying and that was exactly what I was talking about. The third eye fell just in time and Voltio was only left with a half a brain. Finally the last part of his brain fell and it was time to aim for the head. He was completely powerless. The head of Voltio, the Enlightened One, falls to the darkness where it once rose. The millennia of wisdom and knowledge that is too much for a normal person to bear passes through your head. You only get glimpses of what is waiting for you on the other side, but this information stream is too much for your mind to handle. Your head hurts a little, but that doesn't matter as you can clearly feel how something greater has just started to change. The cogs of Fear and Hunger have just begun to rotate on a larger scale. We now have 2 souls from New Gods. The Endless Soul we were given by Nilvan, and now the Enlightened Soul from Voltio. So there's 4 gods and we got 2. 2 more to go. I saved the game in the tower and returned to the dungeons, as the thought of this Lagarde man loomed in the back of my head. I needed to find him, and there was one last place I didn't explore, the right side of the lower dungeons. Your task in the dungeons is done. There is little to no reason in staying here any longer. So we can just leave now? We went through all that trouble, exploring and fighting gods in Mahabre, losing limbs, breaking bones, only to find out our task was long failed. As I've officially failed at my original goal, I went around the entire dungeon fighting enemies I would have never tried fighting. I killed the salmon snake boss and found out he drops one of the best headgear items in the game alongside one of the best souls as well. I circled back to the sewers to fight the beheaded wizard guy and got devoured by this darkness monster he summons. This head is also invincible, there's no point fighting with him. On my way out, I met this weird masked guy named Isaiah who sells maps. There's an image of a pig, 3 jugs and 3 weird men going towards a door. The second map shows Obito and 4 more men standing in front of a triangle of doors. Then I returned to the lower dungeons to kill Enki as well. He dropped an ever-watching talisman and his robe. The talisman is pretty cool. I mean, you don't get any fear if you wear it, so it's pretty useful. I killed the salmon snake boss, Enki, and now I had one more guy left on my radar. I took my shot at the Iron Shakespeare. It took some effort, but he eventually fell. He drops the cell keys to floor 3, but as I've had the lockpick skill unlocked, I never needed them. I was finally done. I returned to the start and walked into the mist in hopes of running away and never turning back. You escaped the dungeons of fear and hunger. Part of you still doesn't believe this to be the truth. You can still smell all the blood and the gore that seeps through the seams of the ancient stone walls of the dungeon. You can still feel the gaze of the hundreds of past warriors sacrificed in the pools of blood now left to rot. You can still feel the pressure of the never-ending darkness that the underground caverns offered. You can still hear the distant flapping of the wings. You still feel dizzy just imagining the rail tracks that led poor souls deeper to the madness, all the way to the altar of darkness. You delved too deep, you know it yourself too. No man could ever return from that deep. You take one more look at the fortress just to make sure you really did make it out. Ending E, escape. I guess it's not going to be as simple as that. You don't get to leave these dungeons. I needed to figure out what to do next. I loaded up an older save outside of Mahabre and started testing everything out, like killing every enemy and every miniboss, lighting every torch in the dungeon. Something activated? This wall opened in the torture chamber where we found someone hanging. I'm guessing this was Shorter's room where he used to hide. In the room, there's one more door with a book placed on a table next to it. The Penance Knights. It's a book that talks of a special unit of the Vatican City that wear tailor-made armors. These Penance Knights are used in the worst tasks and missions where they're not expected to return. Their armor has been designed to only be put on and you can't take it off once you're chosen for the mission. It's got rows of small spikes that drill into your skin and the pain is supposed to cleanse your mind for the task at hand. The door can only be opened with a key. No lockpicking or sweeping will help us this time. Guess who has the key? Shorter. But we've already killed him, haven't we? Well, yes, but the only way to get the key is by using the steal ability on him as he's alive. He doesn't drop the key on death, so I couldn't open it on this save file. I returned to the yard to get through this rubble. I wanted to explore the thicket some more. I'm not going to lie, I googled the layout of the dungeon so I could make sure I didn't miss much. I did go through almost every place, but then I was surprised that the thicket is a completely different section with a lot of levels to it. So I needed to figure out how to get through. There are these purple creatures that guard the thicket called the Mumblers. And I also found another thing the developer overlooked. He forgot to hide the Kahara character model. I'm guessing he was supposed to appear in here if you weren't playing as him, but just ended up being placed out of sight. Not far enough. After stepping on this darker floor tile, I successfully hit a coin flip and dodged the hole. The thing is though, to travel further down the thicket you must jump in anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We are now on level 4, where I found this cool sword stuck in the ground. The thicket is growing around it, an eastern sword. I tried taking it and started a fight with its owner. The problem was that I couldn't actually fight him, as you need cursed weapons to do so. Normal weapons can be used to fight these specters. I was surprised they could actually run away from the fight and still keep the sword. The only downside is that this specter will now start a fight at various points in the game until you eventually defeat him, which upgrades the Eastern Sword. Eastern Sword is one of the best weapons in the game as well, so I definitely recommend going through the thicket to pick it up. After being lost for about 10 minutes, I eventually found my way to the next floor. This floor looked a lot more alive at this point, with vines sprouting from the walls and even more enemies. I found the second purple organ at the last level of the thicket. 2 down and 1 more to go. No clue where I could even possibly find the last one. I thought I went through all of Mahabre and now I'm exploring the last bits of the dungeons. What does it even do? And will it stop the madness that's happening down in these dungeons? At the other side of the organ, there is the final hole that leads us back to level 7. Catacombs. The game became very rough at this point. I was lost for another 10 to 12 minutes looking for anything that I hadn't yet found. I returned to Mahabre with hopes of finding some breadcrumbs that could lead me further in the story, and that's where I had to kind of start getting some information online. Yes, I admit, I know what I said at the beginning of the video. Look guys, I have been playing this game for at least 25 hours at this point. I have explored everything, fought everything, jumped into every hole possible. Believe me, I've tried it all. To progress in this game completely on your own is extremely tough. And some of the stuff I would have never figured out on my own. I would have never returned to the thicket if I didn't find a map showing that it continues further. Fear and Hunger reminds me of one more game that I used to play a lot, and that's Warframe. You must look so much stuff up to progress, so I did. And I found out you must use the husk, the clone you created, and strap him up on the chains in the prison. You choose to sacrifice the husk, and here comes this little brutal minigame where you have to balance out his primary pain and secondary pain. While you're doing that, the tormented one shows up and starts chasing you. I didn't know this at first, but fighting him at this stage isn't an option, as he's first of all very strong, and second of all, even if you do manage to defeat him, it won't help you make any progress. I was frustrated and feeling hopeless. I had no food. I searched every barrel in the game and I knew I ran out of supplies at this point. I wasted all of my resources, empty scrolls, and I knew I had to make a choice. Do I continue to struggle or use all that information and knowledge to start again and have a lot more efficient run? Right after dying to the tormented one, I went back to the main menu and started again. My main goal was to reach Lagarde in time, and I did.
Guys, I made it. I reached Lagarde before he died. I think I did it in like 24 minutes.
The condition that must be met for you to find Lagarde alive is reaching him before the 30-minute mark of your run. If it's a second over that limit, it's a second too late. Now I had a decent crew of myself, Knight, and finally an alive and well Lagarde. This felt like this was the run. I decided to stock up on a lot of food so I'd have no trouble surviving my time in Mahabre, went to collect some gear, souls, and get some proper weapons before heading out to the City of Gods. I fought Isaiah. He's one of the weakest enemies in the game, as he only requires a couple body shots to take down, and also has one of the best armor pieces in the game, his iron mask, which will protect your eyes from getting scratched off. I collected the bone shears as well, as they've helped me immensely in my last boss fight with Voltiel. Went onto the nearest hexen table to curse my longsword to be able to take down specters. Took down the salmon snake to get his soul as well, just for good measure. By the way, I was finally able to open the sealed door in the Olmir tomb room. There were a couple scrolls to pick up and... this thing. The Lady of the Moon. It starts a fight with her, but you don't actually have to fight. I just asked her if she could help us, and she told us not yet, as we don't possess anything she wants, and that she'll know once she sees it. I'll tell you what it is she does and requires right now, because I didn't return to her later in the playthrough. The Lady of the Moon is a servant to one of the gods, a god which is not shown in Fear and Hunger 1, the Trickster god. The lady can heal all your wounds, broken bones, missing limbs. That's what she can do for you. Now what's the price you must pay? More like, what's the sacrifice you must make? What she asks of you is the girl. For you to get completely healed up, she will take the girl. If you think about it, it's a pretty common practice for these beings to trade with you only if you give them children. They got those DD trading policies. The Lady of the Moon is also the creator of Maleba and Pocket Cat. You see, Hunger 2 explains so much and delves deeper into the story of Fear and Hunger, but this video took me 40 plus pages of script and a year, so you get the point. I was ready. I had my armor, my weapons, Lagarde, everything was in place. I took down Voltil with ease and went on to sacrifice the husk once again. Still trying to fight the Tormented One in his normal form, I got killed. I didn't get it, he was too tanky, his spells dealt way too much damage. How do you take him down? I felt dumb as fuck after finding out you can just dodge him completely and that his fight isn't necessary at all. You can walk around him and loop him like a Dead by Daylight killer all the way to the start and then return back and finish the minigame.
No. Whatever you're going through, I get it. You're angry. You need a release.
And also, I can finally show you what I meant during the kid basement scene. Now that I'm here for the second time, you can clearly see the face of Pocket Cat in the darkness. I once again collected the Endless Soul, the Gaunt Knight armor, and went on to sacrifice the husk, properly this time. After collecting the armor and the soul, I returned back to the minigame and actually done it properly this time. The blood from the husk started flowing downwards into the huge pit, almost completely filling it up. And there he was. Standing on top of the blood was the Tormented One. Now I finally had a reason to fight him. He was surprisingly very easy to take down this time around, but the fight had 2 stages. The second stage begins, the Tormented One appearing in the middle of his wheels of torment. The real battle starts now. I started off throwing poisonous darts into his outer circles, as those are the ones that are hitting you with spells, and you're required to take them down before you're even allowed to hit the first wheel. It worked successfully and I proceeded to hit the first circle for the entirety of the fight until eventually taking him down. Now I was in possession of 3 souls, the Endless, Enlightened and Tormented Soul. Only one left. And I'd like to address the elephant in the room as well. I know what you've just seen seemed like the easiest boss fight in the entire game. Listen, there's this thing called status effects and I learned this on my second playthrough. These abilities and poison items are the most OP and effective ways of fighting bosses. As you just witnessed, each dart took out one of the outer circles down in every round. It deals 1000 damage a round and it lasts for the entire fight, essentially letting me target the main circle at every turn. This tactic works with all the bosses in the game and it can be paired with more effects like burn or bleed. You can literally hit a boss with a poison dart and start guarding for the entire fight and you win. It's so OP and makes the bosses a walk in the park. Now you're probably asking yourself if that doesn't make the game too easy and lazy. The answer is not really. Fear and Hunger is almost purely RNG. Every run you get, you might even end up with no status effect spells and no poison darts or even alchemy ingredients to make poison potions. That's when you have to adapt to what you're given and collect the weapons that do spawn every single time. I was just extremely lucky. After collecting 3 or 4 souls, I went on to talk to the nameless guardian that stands in front of the king's door, because what else am I supposed to do? I have explored every bit of the dungeons in Mahabre. This had to be the way.
Human, I see you got the Endless, the Tormented, and the Enlightened Soul. You possess all the required ingredients to pass through. As a last trial, I shall challenge you.
Now it's on. We get to choose if we're ready or not. Come on bro, stay ready! I chopped off both his hands, so he stops using his strong single target abilities and started hitting the body. The dude still tries to hit you by using tackles, but they're pretty weak. He got taken down with ease, all bark, no bite. I was now heading into the Golden Temple. As I entered, I heard barking and it didn't stop until a gate opened and the dogs rushed towards me. The dogs are a weak component, only taking a couple bites from them, I proceeded further into the Golden Temple. All the way at the end, we found the 3rd and last organ. We've now officially cut open all of them. Now all we have to do is find out what it's done. On my way out of the temple, I wanted to check this last room I haven't explored yet. There was something shiny on the floor and after picking it up, we found out it was the king's passage key. We will now be able to enter the Golden Temple in the past, too. The golden temple looked stunning. Now we had to face a different challenge. The temple was filled with fire traps that would burn you to a crisp should you be reckless. We were greeted by the last new god in line, Francois, the dominating one, sitting on his throne. The fight started and there he was in all his glory, holding a golden sword. I targeted his right arm to get rid of the sword and took it out with one lucky crit. His right hand was used for casting spells, so I switched focus to that. He stood with no arms and no way of fighting, so I kept targeting the body. I knew it was too easy to be true. A waterfall of molten gold poured on Francois. Here comes his second phase. I kept attacking his body in hopes of landing some lucky strike that could end this fight in an instant. He hit me with his molten gold ability on his first turn and it dealt a fuck ton of damage. If he was going to keep that up for the entire fight, I might lose all my members, including myself. I tried healing up, but he hit me with the ability taking me down to 1 HP and also killing Lagarde. Our weapons were no match. He was too tanky and his spells were insanely high power. Time to go again. This time I went on and talked to him to see the dialogue options. After hitting him back with my own egotistical answers, he seemed confused and in an irritated state where he even forgot to attack me as it got to his turn. He kept talking to me trying to get an answer as to who controls him. I made him believe that he was the puppet in the greater scheme of things. I chose to ignore his remarks and kept hitting him, eventually proceeding to the second phase. After he attacked me, I went on to talk to him again, making him even more agitated. I noticed the pattern where you can talk to him every 2 turns and essentially stunning him for the entirety of the fight. During the second phase, I started doing it all over again, telling him he's a puppet and slowly draining his health turn after turn. Francois might be one of the easiest fights ever. If you fight him fair and square, 9 out of 10 times you'll be defeated. But if you fight ego with even more ego, he'll crumble thinking he's not all that important. After 5 turns, he finally fell and the throne was now empty. I picked the sit on the throne option, but instead of Kahara sitting on it, Lagarde ran in front of me to do it instead.
This throne. This is the moment I've strived for. This is the moment I suffered for.
Lagarde, what do you mean? You said before. They don't remember?
The RC. You remember our talk about the path? You might not understand this yet, but this is it. The path.
I thought you said you couldn't remember anything?
In order to reach greater heights, to unify the land, to bring upon the new era, I need this power. The strength of kings and queens is not enough. I need more. Something that lasts beyond me.
Why would you look for power and justice in a place like this? Such pure virtues couldn't exist here. This place taints everything it touches.
Do you think any of the Grand Kingdom's history books that you speak of is not pure fiction? They were all built on bloodshed and violence. But what if there was a way that wouldn't require thousands of soldiers on opposing sides shedding their lives? What if such Grand Kingdom only required one soul to succumb to the darkness, one soul to be tainted?
Can anything so grand be built on rotten foundations?
He mentioned the talk they had at the top of that hill during the dream sequence. This was the path he was supposed to take, to sit on the throne and gain godly power. As he sat on it, a great beam of light flashed and he disappeared. I followed him right after. I got transported to this dark gloomy realm. It's called the Void. It separated my entire crew, and as I was exploring looking for my lost members DRC and Lagarde, a text saying "A terrifying presence has caught your scent" appeared. Something was chasing me purely off of my smell. There were also these red people who reminded me of the creatures roaming the halls in the Tomb of Gods. After a minute, a text saying "You get a primal urge to hide somewhere" appeared, and I started to panic. I was unable to find the RC or Lagarde and something was constantly chasing me. I tried looking for a place to hide, but it eventually caught up with me. A huge red blind T-Rex appearing in front of me. I'm not going to lie, out of all the monsters I've encountered in the entirety of Fear and Hunger, this one was the most normal looking. I started attacking and missed all my shots. He was too far away, yet once he was close enough to get hit, it was too late. He was like the darkness enemy that the wizard summons. You can't hit him at all, and once he reaches you, you're automatically dead. I went back again, ready to hide from the threats chasing me and exploring parts I hadn't yet explored. Also, the void is a loop. If you walk far enough, you will eventually end up in front of the throne. It keeps looping and you must find your members as you're being chased the entire time. Once I stopped hearing the T-Rex footsteps, I knew the coast was clear and ended up finding the RC, who joined my crew again. Now we had to find Legarde, and we had eventually found him. But this was no longer Legarde we once knew. After his little monologue about obtaining power and knowledge, he gives us a choice to either kneel to him or telling him he's not our god and fighting him. I chose to kneel to him. You left the dungeons. Contrary to all common sense, you made it out alive. Your return to the civilization would go without festivity. You were back to the square one essentially. Your long journey to the black gained you nothing. The only thing you brought with you was the bigger understanding of all the darkness this world hid beneath the human eyes. Not a day would pass by that you didn't curse this knowledge. Just the idea drove you towards madness with each passing day. After several years living in seclusion, you started hearing rumors about the return of the Knights of the Midnight Sun and their now legendary captain, Legarde. This man with a mysterious aura was unifying the Western world at a rapid rate. It's almost as if the gods themselves were on his side, choosing the right side of the coin at every possible turn. Eventually and inevitably he was thrown as the Yellow King, and he will bring prosperity to the Western world, the kind that had never been seen before. You were never fully convinced, however. The name Yellow King left you puzzled, and something about his campaigns gave you uncanny feelings. On your older days in the Kingdom of Rondon, you finally caught a glimpse of Legarde after multiple decades had gone by since you two departed your ways. You finally understood where the name Yellow King came from. Legarde still looked the same age, almost exactly like you remembered. The only difference was his sickly yellow skin colored by the dark green hue of the endless void. He was not a human. This was not a man taking reins to themselves from the gods. This was something entirely different. We got the ending C-2, the prophecy. Legarde got what he wanted, what he dreamed of, unifying all the lands with the power he obtained in the void and letting us escape the dungeons alive. This ending and the ending E are the least satisfying endings in my eyes. It's basically the path of least resistance, choosing to either escape or fall to your knees. No, not that kind of falling to your knees. I went right back to pick the fight option without even finding the RC. In front of me stood the Yellow King. I had to fight him all alone, with no one to help me and with no poison items in my inventory. You can either attack this asterisk summon, the snake or his head. He killed me in a single turn. This one is going to be very tough, as he can heal himself and use high damage spells endlessly. I decided that as this fight was probably going to be the lengthiest and toughest, I'm going to do it last. It was time to explore other options, so I returned to the thicket to pick up the Eastern Sword. What I didn't expect was that if you find Ragnvalder in the thicket, you would be able to take him into your party. He also mentioned the thicket had its own god, the god of the depths. Not a very well-known god and mostly worshipped by those who are forsaken and forgotten. The cave dwellers in the mines are actually his worshippers. Ragnvalder mentioned that the god of the depths is the one responsible for the layout of these dungeons and that he always changes the shape to challenge new visitors. So even the goddamn RNG layout has a meaning in this game. I asked him if he wants to join my party, and at first he said he wouldn't, as he's still looking for the man imprisoned in this dungeon, and that he has something that he wants, and that he also plans on killing him. But now we already know who he's talking about. Now the second time I asked him to join my party, he said it's too big. He would actually join us if there weren't 4 of us. So I just went on to retrieve the Eastern Sword and actually defeated the Spectre this time around, and the sword upgraded to Purified Eastern Sword. Once I finally left the thicket, I got greeted by this disgusting monstrosity. Do you know who that is? That's Sir Seymour and Lord Buckman. Do you remember our marriage of flesh we had with DRC? That's the result of a failed marriage. Yeah. They've done exactly what you're thinking. Left here to suffer for eternity. Let's just move on from them. I started walking around the entire dungeon to figure out what got activated after we destroyed all purple organs. Our question was answered after returning to the place where we found the Cube of Depths. The mouth of this huge fish opened, I climbed inside. This place is called the Gauntlet. It's filled with many traps, enemies, bugs that drain your health. It's impossible to traverse it unscathed. Instead of regular monsters, the moonless enemies are down there, which are a little bit stronger than your average guard. There are these X-traps that will cut you down if you touch them. There's spiked floor that you have to time right, and believe me, I died down here like 20 times. Not once did I have a run where I didn't get hit by those spikes. My brain can't time it properly, I swear to God. I went to the left side of this gauntlet, and after a very long time, a text saying a terrifying presence has entered the room appeared. Going further, I encountered the Crow Mauler, but something was off. He had 2 heads. I was going to fight him. I was not running away anymore. I took out his weapon and threw a red vial at one of his heads to stop him from using the peck skill. I blinded his left head, but the right head still used peck and missed Lagarde. A wave of relief hit me and I went back at him. I was hitting him so hard he crumbled in the 3rd turn. We outgrew an even stronger version of Crow Mauler. He was no longer a foe to be feared. He dropped the crow key and a Captain's Diary Part 3. Captain Rudimer, 5th of August, 1590.
I've had feverish dreams for the longest time now. In the dreams, the patterns on the walls, the calls of the crows, the swirling clouds, they haunt even my waking hours. I haven't had a moment of tranquility in months. It almost feels like the dreams become wilder as the madness in these dungeons grows ever more stronger. I don't know which is the result of which. Did the dreams come before the madness, or are the dreams a result of the ever ensuing chaos? Everything I see seems to remind me of the dream's otherworldly patterns. I swear, the intestines of a gutted prisoner from yesterday took the very same shape. But when I try to describe its organic, ever-shaping pattern to scholars or draw it down on this very paper, I fail to do so. Like a bonfire with flames reaching out to a night sky, so is its shape without a concrete form. These shapes are dangerous without a doubt. Effects like these are far too much for mere humans to comprehend. I'm the epitome of their obsession, so I know it better than any. I know it better than any. Maybe I'm the only sane one left to acknowledge this. It is in my responsibility to clean everything up once again. The crows. They give their testament to my suspicions. I'll start to purge. I will root out the madness. Only I can do it.
Captain Rudimer went insane. He started having visions, the crows were talking to him. He felt like he was obliged to clean up the entire dungeon of evil, and in doing so lost his mind and became a part of it. You can rest now, Captain Rudimer. We'll take care of it. Well, not yet at least. By the way, I forgot to mention, mainly because I didn't record for the first couple hours of my second run, but I have managed to steal the vault key off of Shorter at the start of the game. And just now I remembered it, so I went back to see what's in there. It was the Penance Knight armor. I stepped inside of it, and since I was using the Salmon Snake Soul, I wasn't taking any damage from it. With the strongest armor in the game, I now felt better going through the gauntlet. Even though not even this armor would save me from the boulder. But this time we managed to evade it. On the other end, I almost ended up throwing my monitor out the window. The yellow mages can hit you even if you're not in a fight, and as he was out of sight, he kept hitting me with his spells until I eventually lost all my limbs and had to stop breathing. We're so close and yet so far. I got right back and took out that yellow lizard mage. There were no more enemies after him. This was the final stretch. We walked into the darkness. Crossing over this huge pile of bodies, we were nearing the end. As I approached the edge overlooking this endless void, the game cut to black. The girl mesmerized by the darkness. She turned around and started twisting on the ground like something straight out of The Exorcist. I started asking her if she was okay while refusing to attack her. She transformed again into this huge female statue. In desperation, I kept talking to her. The god tries to talk to you, but its speech is beyond your understanding. It attacked me with needles. After that, I knew I had to fight back. There was no other way. I attacked the so-called god of fear and hunger with everything I had. It transformed again into this female with an open stomach. Once she got hit, she transformed again, now taking shape of this huge, unimaginable creature, like something straight out of Silent Hill. After 3 turns of fighting this horrid form, her last transformation happened. The newborn god is trembling in pain. It had shed all its skin, turning into a wooden pillar with robes and a halo above her head. It started mutilating itself. The newborn god in its final form was powerful and it eventually took me down. On my way back, the girl ended up dying to the yellow wizard mage and I was like, now what? Does the game just end? I was curious what happens if you get there without the girl, so I moved on without her. I had to fight Grorov? Grorov, the destroyer of men. This ginormous creature with 5 eyes stood in front of me. He took me out in 2 rounds and even the fucking game crashed. These were the 3 endings I was missing. Defeating the god of fear and hunger, Grorov and the Yellow Knight. Oh, and also one more ending, but we're gonna get to that later. I tried taking out the god of fear and hunger first, so I started hitting the girl right from the start. That sounds very wrong. It was time to pull out my favorite strategy, status effects. I used poison vials and burn right away. It took out Lagarde, but I knew if I stayed in this fight, I would take her out with poison eventually. With 4 consecutive Lagarde crits in a row, the god was defeated. We were victorious.
Oh my god! I've done it. I've done it. I've done it.
The god of fear and hunger acknowledges your suffering. We've finally done it. We've defeated her. It's final.
Why do you resist? The thought must have crossed your mind at some point. The thought that you delved too deep. The thought that this would be a one-way trip. So instead of fighting the inevitable, why not embrace it? Just lay down and rest. There is beauty in this darkness that can be harnessed and used to usher something new.
You never escaped the dungeons. Your efforts would go unsung, but your part in the greater scheme of things was vital nevertheless. You had a vital part in the birth of a new god. One that is not a mere new god, but one that rivals the older ones. You had the first-hand experience of witnessing the coming paradigm shift the world is to go through in the new era. An era of the newborn god, the god of fear and hunger. They'll come know this day as the cruel age. An age where a human-born god would finally rise after millennia of mankind's struggle as the feeble new gods. Maybe your fate was an act out of mercy, the last traces of compassion the newborn god shed after her true ascension. Your demise was peaceful after all. Ending A. The god of fear and hunger. We never defeated the newborn god. We could never defeat it. We witnessed its transformation, and out of mercy for our acts of kindness towards it as it was once a part of our party, she gave us a quick and peaceful death. After its arrival, the cruel age comes along with it. This is something that we'll talk about later as we discover all the endings. You see, not every ending in this game is canon, but multiple are. It's messy, because if you want to truly explain it all, we'd have to cover Fear and Hunger 2 as well. Because the endings in Fear and Hunger 1 feel like Miro didn't plan on making a sequel. This time I was going back to the Void, but instead of letting Legarde sit on the throne, I poisoned, starved, and chopped him up so I wouldn't have to bring him with me. After exploring the Void for 10 minutes, this time I found someone different waiting for me on the hill.
Kahara, you remember the moment we got our freedom for the first time? That is the feeling we've been striving for ever since. Leave your burdens behind, leave your body behind. Let me continue our flow with the wind.
A new god greets you, an oddly familiar new god.
The only place where I can truly be free are my dreams. In the vast open plains of this netherworld, I had no burden over the worries of my past life. Of course, this is a flawed logic. One should not bind herself to a set location. One should be able to wander the world like a wind. But even gods are allowed to have flaws, no?
As time will pass, will you tell people about your monumental achievement and share your gospel, how you passed through all the hardships the dungeons laid before you, and about your eventual ascension. Stories about your fabled endeavors are passed to people of all ages. Your tales inspire many in the times to come, from children to elderly. In the coming era, mankind is at the brink of chaos. Diseases run wild and kingdoms wage war with hundreds of thousands of casualties on all fronts, both women and children included. You would have the power to interrupt and potentially stop this. You have the strength to stop the mindless killing, but that will require you to step out of the plane of this void. Instead, you could try to affect mankind through religion and beliefs. Affecting the whole culture means slow change, and its effects don't save those in immediate peril, but religion might have more long-lasting effects. You leave your golden throne to disrupt the ongoing wars. With overwhelming strength, you crush entire armies that stand in your way. Kings and sultans of the time are left in terror before your power. Once you are done with your rage, mankind is left in a state of chaos. Common people got no one to turn on to, and thus they seek safety from smaller tribes and communes. By meddling with the mankind, you ended up halting the technological and cultural progress. People are also less self-imposed because of relying on gods in the past. The civilizations are back to Iron Age-like structure, where physical strength is the only thing that matters. You watch other deities and gods fall around you one by one as men revolt against old world order. However, your gospel back in the day was so strong that people remember it loud and clear. Your legacy had only grown stronger with you crushing the warring kingdoms before the chaos began. Men fear you. You are known as the fierce god, and because there are no other gods left to rival your power, you become the one and only god, despite your strength being limited to that of a new god. You never escaped the dungeons of fear and hunger. Instead, you chose eternal void and darkness as a new god. Ending D, a new god. We now have the endings A, C-2, D and E. 2 more to go. And by the way, the different choices you get to make don't influence the ending. You'll still get the same outcome no matter what you chose. This time I was going to be better prepared for both the Yellow King and Groroth. Instead of bringing the girl with me, I recruited Ragnvaldr for more firepower. It was time to take him down once and for all. Luckily he used whispers on Ragnvaldr instead of me, so I felt safer. We went after his arms right away. Gurov took out Ragnvaldr in a single turn though, so he wasn't even able to land an attack. I took out most of his eyes, so he wouldn't be able to cast as many spells. One of his arms got chopped off and most of his eyes were closed. He didn't have many more options left. The RC crumbled, but right before her death, she casted her pyromancy spell, so now I had guaranteed 1000 damage a turn. We took out his last hand and all he was left with was a single eye. I destroyed it and yet he was still able to cast spells.
Why do you resist, human?
We get 3 answers to pick, so I picked the third one. Knowledge. Gurov confirms that the other gods no longer exist in this world. He explains that the other gods are pure true forms of feelings and ideas, and that humans are too tainted to understand purity. He tells us of the perfect shape of fear and destruction, and that the shape could never exist, as it varies from person to person. We get asked if we want to see the true shape or not. I answered yes. Our sanity declines at an alarming rate. We start gasping for breath as the shock and horror shut down bodily functions one by one. Your body must shut down, as that is the only escape it can come up with when facing this other being. Your life runs past your eyes in a heartbeat as you regret ever setting foot in this dungeon. You never escaped the dungeons of fear and hunger. No one ever heard about you again. Without a trace, you vanish from this world. It's almost as if you fell out of history books altogether. Your screams of terror never reached anyone. Your long quest only gave you hints about the greater scheme of things. You learned a fraction of the secrets the ancient world holds. But even that is more than what is meant for human ears. Ending B. The older one. We saw and heard too much. Disappeared without a trace, or story was left untold. Never to see light of day again. We, the players, don't get to see anything. Maybe that's for the better. Now it was time for the last ending, to fight and defeat Lagarde, the Yellow King. I was going to bring Ragnvaldr with me to have more men in the fight against Lagarde. What I didn't know was that if you bring both Lagarde and Ragnvaldr into Mahabray together, you'd be forced to kill one of them. I had to choose whether I was going to save Lagarde or Ragnvaldr. Great. So I went through all that trouble. Don't worry, there is a way to bamboozle the game. If you bring them to Mahabray in the past, the scene of them fighting in front of the gate won't happen and you'll be able to bring them to the throne in peace. The thing is, this wasn't intended by the developer. It's probably another bug, as Lagarde and Ragnvaldr won't ever speak to each other for the duration of this trip. It was time. I entered the void and went on to find my lost crew members. I found Ragnvaldr chilling by a fire in the corner of the map. Talking to him, we find out that the concept of time and space is very different here. Minutes and seconds on Earth turn into years in the void, as all the characters question how long they've been here. Right after Ragnvaldr, I went on to pick up the RC. I felt confident. I roughly knew where Lagarde was, and as I couldn't find a hole to hide in, I charged right in his direction with no regard for the T-Rex chasing us. He caught up, right in front of Lagarde. We started attacking him and we were somehow dealing damage. He was right in front of us when we decided to hit his head, and to our surprise, he didn't eat me in one turn. He started fighting. The burn from the RC's pyromancy spell took its toll on him and we won. We were unstoppable. I believed the Yellow King was going to be an easy pick after all we'd been through. We approached Lagarde and refused his offer, starting a fight. Right away, I used the poison vial on him and used my new spell, Blood Golem. With a combo of poison and burn equaling to about 2000 damage per turn, and with our 4th 200 HP ally Blood Golem, he was not going to stand a chance. Yeah, about that. His first spell was a Black Orb cast directly at me and I died in a single turn, not even getting to properly fight. I needed to protect myself from his spell. Ragnvaldr must use Warcry and tank all his damage for me, even at the expense of his own life. There was no other way. I summoned the Blood Golem, used Warcry on Ragnvaldr and used the Poison Vial through the RC. His first Black Orb killed Ragnvaldr right away. We were hitting him hard and I kept praying he wouldn't cast anything life-ending on me. He used Black Orb on the RC this time, killing him. Right after that, the status effects came through for me. Legarde, Ragnvaldr and DRC, all of them dead in front of me. After defeating the Yellow King, we appeared outside of the dungeon. You defeated Legarde, the prophesized one with delusions of creating a new era with his godhood. After his defeat, you wake up outside the vile fortress that trapped you before. It all seems so hazy. Did all those events really happen? You can still smell all the blood and the gore that seeps through the seams of the ancient stone walls of the dungeon. Wait, this feels oddly familiar. This is the exact same writing you get in ending E, except now it's ending C, the Yellow King. We've achieved all 5 endings. Well, all 5 standard endings. You see, this game has former endings called the S endings. You can only achieve those by playing on the hard mode difficulty. They're basically like the canon endings of the characters. I will explain them right now. The Kahara S ending is what the maps from Isaiah are for. In short, you buy the maps, collect all the valuable items that are on the map, like for example the red scarf you get off of that bridge guardian, and you escape the dungeons alive and well. The Ragnvaldr S ending is him literally killing every single boss and mini-boss in the dungeons and leaving. It's his revenge arc. Enki's S ending is him traveling to the void, meeting his new god self and refusing to become a new god, getting enlightened and returning to Earth. And lastly, DRC's S ending is him fighting Legarde. That's all. Well, not really. You must find 3 scrolls through which DRC learns the art of rebirth. Once you learn that, you have to find an already dead Legarde that DRC will end up reviving. Now what if I tell you that I just lied, that all the S endings are canon? It's confusing, because it's a huge mix. I'm now going to explain the canon endings that are confirmed in Fear and Hunger 2. The canon ending is Legarde becoming the Yellow King, the girl becoming the god of Fear and Hunger, and Enki getting enlightened. Ragnvaldr surviving and together with Moonless probably living their lives together. Also, what happened to Ragnvaldr and Kahara is never stated, so I'm going to believe that Kahara became rich off of his S ending and lived a normal life, and Ragnvaldr escaping with his new dog. As Moonless is confirmed to be alive in Fear and Hunger 2. Overall, there's no true ending in Fear and Hunger 1, and I finally accomplished what I've set out to do. I completed the game, explored everything I could, and tried my best to explain what I found along the way. Hope you enjoyed this very lengthy video of mine. Fear and Hunger is an amazing game, which requires a lot of patience and strength and willpower, but it's so rewarding. Once you know what you're doing, it becomes one of the best games I've ever played. But I'd also like to point out all the bugs and errors the game has though. It's something that was very annoying, as most of them are game breaking. I know it was his first experience with game development, but you could have fixed your game before making a new one. Other than that, this is an extremely impressive game he managed to make. The gameplay is your typical JRPG formula, but the story is rich, and getting to uncover it bit by bit was intriguing and enjoyable. You can see the obvious inspiration as well. And talking about inspiration, my last key point is going to be this. Berserk. I watched the anime, yes, I know you're going to be mad about this. I wasn't going to read a million pages of the manga. I know the anime is nothing compared to it, shush, I got all the information I needed. The entire Legarde storyline is basically Golden Age arc from Berserk. Like, he didn't even try to hide it. From DRC being Kiaska and Legarde being this beautiful knight who tried to rule the world and ended up tortured, eventually ascending to this godly figure. He's literally Griffith. Then the Claymore sword being Guts' sword, or the Penance Knight armor being the Berserk armor. It's so obvious. I was watching the Berserk anime thinking that I'm legit just watching Fear and Hunger lore. It's kinda crazy, but other than the Legarde ending, the other 4 I felt were original, and the honorable mention being that the Chromolor was very reminiscent of Pyramid Head, even giving him the same introduction. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for watching. If you completed this vid, I just wanted to say thank you with all my heart. This took me more than a year. And also I wanna thank my friends. Only one of them is an actual YouTuber, so I cannot really shout them out except him. Thank you, Mar, for being the voice actor. And everyone else is basically just a friend, so I'm not going to shout out their names, but I'm very thankful for them helping me out. I do plan on making videos like this, but I also can sacrifice a year of my life for one video. I already have 2 more games planned out, but if you want to support my journey reviewing and explaining stories, intriguing games, and/or series or movies, drop a sub and follow me on Twitch as well, where I'm streaming occasionally. But other than that, that's all I wanted to say. Love you and bye.